I said good morning.
Yeah, that's better.
I've been in too many adult spaces where the coordinator is fucking doing that.
Yeah. Oh, bro.
Like not even just work related, like organizational spaces, and they're just like doing this like hello.
Weren't people excited about that?
It's like I'm tired.
Yeah.
I feel like that shit it activates like some Winter Soldier shit in adults' minds now. You're just like, I said good morning. Like, I have to kill the president. Like some wild shit.
Wasn't it a spokesperson for the White House that did that? She was also like, and everybody on Twitter was just like,
I remember
yes.
that.
Oh my god!
Yes.
Like, you know,
like nice.
clap emoji.
Control the room, queen.
Yeah. I think she was like, good morning, and the press
demand
just didn't say it.
attention.
She's like, I said good morning. And
Oh yeah, I think I vaguely remember this. Yeah.
we're all adults.
Entitlement is crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Good morning.
That's how we should be saying. If no one responds, move on. Yeah. If no one responds, move on.
Yeah.
People
So you
told
guys
you
don't know graduate. Okay, gotcha.
how they feel.
Ew.
Anyways, tell us about Amsterdam. Bryan Wolff, creative director and designer.
Tell us
I didn't
about.
Welcome to the
How do
tour
you-
of Amsterdam.
How do you describe yourself? Do you describe yourself as a
you a
I
dammer?
hate this question so much.
Oh,
like
yeah.
creative
I do
director,
too. I do
copyright.
too.
I mean,
How
it's
do
just
other
like
people
whatever.
describe you? How about that?
Yeah, creative director, I guess. I mean, whatever the job wants to call me, to be honest. Is
Right.
usually what I go for.
Right.
Yeah, creative person, human.
From the
Netherlands, from Amsterdam. Well, from nearby Amsterdam.
Mm-hmm.
While I lived in New York, I usually described it as the New Jersey of Amsterdam. That was like an actual. That's kind of how my hometown is thought about in the Netherlands.
What's that accent like? What's that accent in like?
So they're just going like, yo. They're going like they're doing the Running Man.
Is there an accent difference in the Netherlands? Like
There
across
is, but
the-
it's not that big. I mean,
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Probably there is.
I don't know shit about.
Yeah.
There is like there's
I
a
was
part of the
laughing
world.
today because I'm like, what if I came on here and was just like so pot, like you can just fucking like the most American questions, like you can.
What
you
about
can
the
fuck?
fascia?
You can pay for it out there, right?
See, what's weed? So you buy mushrooms in a store. How's that? What's that like?
So
you
there-
get a
no,
blowjob for
sorry,
lunch.
coffee shop.
Red light district, am I right?
Ludicrous, am I right?
Yeah.
Wait, wasn't that a whole album?
Red-
Or
I think
the
Red Light District.
Wow.
or was it a song or a single? Or?
I think it's like a refrain, just a common refrain.
I threw like,
We in the red light district
that's
and
hard.
disturbing the peace is not an illusion.
no,
we
this-
run in the
I live around the
streets.
corner
I
from
just
you,
know
leads
there's
me-
mad people riding bikes
That
like
is-
This leads me
yeah.
to
on like a thing, drinking,
which
know,
you
those
hate.
pedaling.
Oh, that-
Which you
Yeah, we don't
notoriously
condone
hate.
I hate
This
bikes.
leads me to a good question though. Like, what was it like growing up in Amsterdam and then seeing that as the sole depiction of Amsterdam in like U.S. media, like entertainment?
I don't know. You just like, it's so ridiculous. You're just like, that's obviously not true. I don't know. You don't
Really?
think about it
Okay.
much. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
There's
not
also-
true what we saw on the in the movies.
Rick
and the
Steve's tour of
commercials.
Amsterdam didn't
But
cover
it's
it
even
all?
more like weed and like coming to New York and like I knew more stoners here than I did back home. Like nobody really smokes weed back home.
Yeah.
And then, like
Because they're
Americans.
happier.
But I don't know. It's a weird thing.
They're
It's
not
like,
working the fucking
Just
grill.
weed tourism. It's a little bit like Denver. I've been there a couple times in the past year. Everybody there is just from the South.
Mm.
They're all just Southerners who are like, it's weed. It's legal. It's legal. Let me go. I gotta go. And I feel like everybody who's like a native person
Yeah,
from
it's
Denver,
just like you
I
do it
don't
when you're
give a shit.
14 because it is legal and easily available, and then you're like, okay, yeah, I don't know, it's not really for me, and then I don't know.
Yeah.
we'll move on.
Interesting. The criminality of it almost draws one to the substance. Curious.
War on
Interesting.
drugs. I'm gonna rethink the war on drugs now.
Now.
Yeah, yeah.
Right now.
Yeah, in this moment, right now.
Damn. And so there's just not, open air heroin usage constantly everywhere?
There is not. There is like in the
Wow.
red light district. There is signs of like there will be signs of like white, like watch out for white heroin. Like there will be like weird seasons where I guess there will be like they know that something's happening or warn tourists of certain things because there is more stuff happening there. But
You do have to watch out for the white heron. It's a little more prejudice.
Yeah, I feel like that's the modern day myth. Like, watch out for the white heron.
sounds like a Marvel.
The tale of the white heron.
The white heron.
One day a village was visited by a white heron. Everyone was happy taking regular heroin until it showed up. Wow,
The white
sounds
heron.
nice.
It foretells
Yeah, it's not
death.
too bad.
And there's like a pretty big design cultural history
There is, I
in the
guess.
Netherlands,
Yeah.
correct?
Correct. Yeah, there is, and they're trying to like lean into a new. They're just released a book called The New Style, trying to like kind of copy that into like there's still cool design happening. Like it's not just history. We're still doing it, but it's not that.
Gotcha.
Right.
Yeah.
Not
It's
quite
not
that.
just the past, guys. We're killing it now. Young and Lock.
That's funny as fuck. Like, are they
Basically.
designing like a cool
He
McDonald's?
looked
or
at me
something?
like, yeah,
That's
yeah,
nice.
basically.
Yeah.
We have a future.
I feel like your McDonald's have those egg chairs from Men in Black. That's what everyone's eating McNuggets in.
Oh God,
Yo.
Ricky's just gonna get that HD Blu-ray
Yeah,
footage in the air right now. Will Smith joining the feds.
Just like what are those like lounge pits? I feel like that's what a McDonald's has in the
2001
Netherlands.
lobby.
Yeah.
yeah.
I think it was somebody. It was
The
somebody.
Victorian bedroom from
Yeah.
2001 is every McDonald's.
It was somebody from
Basically,
the.
yeah, and it
somebody-
serves beer.
Oh yeah,
Isn't that the
true.
Pulp Fiction thing? That he's just like, and they serve beer in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
Not at McDonald's.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a quarter pound. It's called a Royale with cheese.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. You're like, tell me more.
Well, do you feel like there's something about growing up in Amsterdam that sort of puts you down a design track or pathway, or was it just when you
No.
think about it, it's just this is my personal?
Was
sort
it
of-
just?
Yeah, it
saying-
wasn't pushed in high school at all, to be honest. Like it's
Okay.
very
Yeah.
similar, I think, to most like global north high schools where it's like there's not that many career paths spelled out for you, and design
Mhm.
wasn't necessarily like very clear
Yeah.
at all, to be honest. No.
You just saw that video that was which Jedi Council chair is the most comfortable, and that was it.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, ideally, I want to live in a world where we all sit in the Yoda chair and we all float around, kind of like Wall-E, actually.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I'm prefiguring. Wall-E. No,
Do you remember the moment where you were like, design? This is a thread I want to go further down and explore.
I was just
even?
like, I really hated high school at some point, and just knew I wanted to be into something in college,
Mhm.
and started way too early. Like I was like, I need to find something that I like.
Mhm.
I knew I liked drawing. My great grandfather was like an architect, so that was in the back of my mind of like, oh, I
Mhm.
guess that's visual and creative, and then just sort of went down the path of like, maybe architecture, nope, too technical. Like I don't like making stuff with my hands. That's
Mhm.
off.
Yeah.
Like industrial design, oh, you still have to build models. That's not for me. And then graphic design, oh, that's maybe more the thing. And then there was actually an art school that had graphic design and advertising as a like major, and
Mhm.
and then I was like, what's the difference? Because the graduate work looked the same.
Right.
And this guy, in hindsight, a douche, but like at the moment, I was like, oh, that sounds sick. He was like, the graphic design department designed the poster. The advertising department came up with the idea for the poster. And I was like, oh, great. Then I don't need any design skills at all.
hell yeah.
Yeah, so I went down that path, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
When I
Man.
go ahead.
No. Please. Look.
James.
Every time I think. Every time I hear the phrase creative director, I just like have flashbacks to being a carpenter. And just like
Were they the
This-
enemy in that situation?
they were very much the enemy.
Yeah.
It's a hierarchy.
Well,
Yeah.
it's a hierarchy, and it's like I just have the refrain in my head of just like, yeah, what you're asking us to do is literally impossible, and they're like, no, try it,
Try it. Yeah.
just try it.
There's no, like creativity is all about yes and. Put on the positive hat. Come on. Like, I need to be surrounded by people that just try.
Yeah, I
it's-
wanted to. I felt the urge to kind of like share my like how I relate to design, because I think it's.
Yeah.
I don't know. And also like just as a segue into how we connected too, but
Yeah.
like when I think of design, I think about how I was just a visual kid in general. I was like drawing and illustrating from the time I was like really, really little. So it didn't become like design didn't become design until I remember this like it was yesterday. I was in 8th grade, and I was sitting next to this kid named Joshua Davis, and he had his notebook open, and he was drawing the Star Bolt logo for a bathing ape in his notebook. And I looked over, and I was like, in my head, I was like, that is so fucking sick. Like, it was like my version of the Superman image.
I thought it was going to be the S.
No, not the S.
Yeah.
No,
That
but
was
that
it
was
for
like,
me.
that was, it hit me like that though. I was
Yeah.
like, God damn, what the fuck? And I was like, what is that? And he was like, it's Bape. And I was like, what? And he's like, you don't know Bape? Like, you don't know? It was like this moment where he was like,
Yeah. We're never.
okay. And I'm like 13, like we're like 13, 14 years old. And then I just went and I like Googled it, and it just opened me up to the world of Japanese streetwear.
Right.
And then that's when like I can first remember like design becoming a thing in my mind. And then throughout high school, I started making music, and then I was taking like these digital art classes. So I was learning how to use Photoshop for the first time. And so I started doing graphic design in high school. And then the short of the evolution from there is I'm doing like logos, album artwork for myself, for other people. And then it's sort of like the last time I did like design work for like another person was when I was working for Pusha T in 2017, but it was like for one of his artists that he was trying to get.
When he was doing the McDonald's.
It was before that. It was actually during the Drake beef, like rap back and forth.
really?
Wow.
That's when I was like doing work for him.
He's like, Z, can you design a baby and put it on the Toronto needle? And
I'm not
Those
gonna
meme
get.
wars.
I'm not
yeah,
gonna.
what memes was? I feel like he was just like a boomer with like trying to get you to like
Drake
make
was doing
memes.
the
of
meme
No.
Drake.
I'm not gonna go too deep into this.
Z tracked down the blackface picture of Drake. That's what happened.
Wow.
I do hold secrets for sure. I'm
I
not
bet.
joking. I do have secrets. But the one thing I will say is he was like an auntie, like a black auntie. That's kind of how he talked, like in meetings and calls. It was sort of like, and like an academic. I have like black aunties that are academics, and it's like a very specific sort of like. And no. I was wondering why don't we? It's like that sort of cadence. And just to clarify, I was doing like creative direction and like artist development for one of his artists. It wasn't for him directly.
Right.
So I was just making like mad logos, like designing, chains, but I was also writing treatments for like music videos and doing styling stuff. And I worked in fashion as well, just retail fashion, but
He was like, "You're gonna wear a lot of hats in this role." Like, that's what he was like.
I wish I part of me wants to like share concrete anecdotes, but I'll save that for when the cameras are
The real
off.
question is,
long
what would
weeks.
happen if you did?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, we connected through some of my other work, and on the design tip. I don't know if you knew that I was like a design person.
I mean, it was obviously like the stuff you were involved in had a certain level of design.
Right.
So it's like, okay,
But you
it's
don't
being
know.
appreciated within the
Someone involved is
Yeah.
like has an eye for this.
You never know outside. Like, is it one person doing all this? Is
Right.
It, you know,
Right.
You
Right.
never know. It's
But then, yeah, in the context of like this project for like an interactive web experience, which probably is gonna be used for Spark and some of the stuff we're working on. That's sort of where we met and connected and got to have just dialogue about the shit we talk about on the show all the time, but like also specific. I feel like design world, weird tech world specific dynamics that I hope we can like talk about here.
conjure up here.
Yeah. I feel like we've been on the edge of it at times, and like I'm thinking of the Praxis Society thing for some reason, because there was like, you know, some very intentional design behind it, and there's just a very, I don't know how you would describe it, but it's just like intersection of like design,
is
music,
getting-
fashion, technology. There is this subculture that's almost, there isn't a name for it, but that's existed for years and that we sort of like interface with here and there.
But now it's not a subculture anymore. That's the weird thing, is that now it's
not.
getting like,
It's not.
now it's
Yeah.
just it's everywhere, and you can't really trust that anymore. Like it used to be a sign of like something cool,
Right.
like, oh, there's this aesthetic and I can't really put my finger on it. But now there's like project like Praxis, even though it's not maybe the coolest aesthetic, but also like Earth is this other project. And
Yeah, we
I
touched
like
about
I like how it looks. Like literally
Yeah.
the typography, everything is like cool,
Yeah.
but
Where's
I
the
don't know, it's
content?
like it's not a sign of anything, you know. Like,
right.
Do you mind maybe pulling that up because I have no context for Earth.
The project Praxis, because we
Praxis, I know
Yeah.
we talked about but
Earth,
Earth
I
specifically.
think it's Earth.net
Okay.
or Earth. I don't know what it is. Actually.
It's not. It's definitely not .net. Somebody.
No, that's crazy. That's what's the crazy thing.
Earth.com. No one had taken that.
Maybe Earth.net.
Do you
or
remember
Earth.org.
just Googling
Earth.co or something?
Do you remember just typing in www.anything.com and seeing what came up like before
Yeah.
Google
Scary.
really?
That's
like
yeah, that's how it used to.
yeah,
be.
you used to be like www.coolkidsfun
Oh,
Star
no, they
Wars.
did. They did
Yeah,
get
yeah.
Earth.net, so they got
Wow.
money.
oh
Yeah.
wow.
I was so excited when Pokemon.nl worked.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
When I
wow.
was that age, like, and there was no Google. Yeah, this is like I was like, okay.
Okay, yeah, this is crazy. We meet at the crossroads.
Yeah, we had a whole text conversation
Yeah.
about this shit.
I have a
right
lot of
here.
feelings about this. That
It's annoying because it's tied to the Praxis Society conversation. There's all these
Yes.
like quote unquote world building efforts that are starting up.
community
Right.
building.
Yeah, they're using the
Yeah.
same exact rhetoric. They're
Yes.
if anything, they're getting closer in on the kind of
Oh
terms.
no,
we've been
this
using.
makes plenty of sense. Fractal pluralities fragment world orders as internet scale cooperatives amputate
Okay.
invisible hands.
Right,
That makes
right.
sense
Yeah.
to
Okay,
me.
Yeah.
on not on the accessibility piece, obviously,
It makes
but like
perfect sense.
Governmental institutions are remodeled as serotonin reuptake fulfillment
The
centers.
West is ending. The East is rising. We meet at the crossroads. Welcome to Ultra History. For real this time. A new hysterical sublime. The age after money.
Like, you're
but
not
before
Kojima. You don't have the
God.
swag to
bro,
say
no.
weird shit like
This is
that.
the real
Well-
end game. But be honest with yourself. What do you really want? To stop time? To
who approved? There was no
Bro,
democratic process in
no.
approving
No.
this
No.
copy here because
And
this
if it
is,
was, I'm terrified.
yeah.
demos.
Yeah, the group, the mind hive
The
that came
hive
up with
mind?
this.
Do you think this makes too much sense? I don't know. It's a little too straightforward.
I think we should dial it back just a little bit.
Or take your chances and build it anew. I could
And so
say
this
so
is,
much just
whoever
on
works
that.
at this is like at like a fucking holiday dinner trying to explain what they do, and they're like, we try to rewind time. It's
There-
hard to explain.
okay, first-
Invisible hands.
Okay,
you know
first
that?
of all, it's all in aerial. You're not
If you're into building cooperative economies, send us a message.
Yeah. The closest they have to an actual project is basically like a cooperative housing thing where you buy a house with crypto through them and then somehow are part of like a
Red
house
flag.
swap. yeah. That's all you need to know.
Crypto is fucking a pyramid scheme at this point. Like, anyone not getting fucked by crypto is just lucky or doing it right. I don't know.
You give us your Doge, we give you a house. That's how it
Yeah.
works. That's just
Who
how
are
it
we
works.
talking to that was like NFTs only exist because you needed something to buy with crypto? Like that was the only reason they exist. Who was telling me that? Or was
I
that
mean,
a
you could-
TikTok?
I don't
you
have
could-
no
I don't know
idea.
what
I
I'm
feel like that
saying.
was a TikTok.
You can broaden it out even further than that and just say that there's a sector of finance capital that needed rather wanted a new realm to play and generate fiat currency in.
To launder money.
It's all scary.
I mean, but because it's like, no, it's just like competing with the logic of the state, but they're trying to do it on their own terms with their own fiat. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the same. It's the same.
dynamics.
and
Right.
it's the same,
Same
people with
game.
lots of money too. You know,
Right.
they're just.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the biggest promise of crypto is like now a new group could be on top.
Yeah.
But it's still about the top. Like, it's still the
It's
same.
still
Still
the
a
same
free for all
Yeah.
competition, but
right.
resetting the clock.
Right.
No, it's exciting because this group never was on top before, so now they can be on top,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
somebody else can be on the bottom.
Be early
Yeah.
to the new pyramid.
It's coming.
No,
Literally.
that's
Yes.
it. In a phrase.
Literally,
Yeah,
That's
that's
really
it.
good.
Yeah. It's coming. It's a new world order, and it starts with Greg.
And we call that Earth 2, and we just launched it.
Yeah. Their dream is like for the regular economy to just completely tank and like Bitcoin to be the only thing that they just want Bitcoin to be worth as much as it is. It's not about freedom.
They want a million little pyramids bumping up against each other instead of one big one.
Yeah, man. Crazy.
Fucked up.
I don't know. It's like decentralization is used in 1,000,001 different ways, right? So it's hard to use the word now. It's sort of like saying socialism or something. It's like I have no idea what you mean by that.
Right.
Yeah.
But a part of it is like the moving on the ethos of the oxymoron of anarcho-capitalism. Like there's this sense of like, you know, it's like the we need to break up the big banks. You know, like we need to break up the monopoly, and we need to create a world system where we can still have monopolies, but they're just like, you know, we can still have hierarchies and centralization, but it's, you know, it's not as concentrated with them. It's
I just want to extrapolate the logic of my nuclear family out into the entire world. That's what I want to do.
They're just like, we need to get rid of monopolies, even though that's the point of this system.
Fiat.
That's you're winning if you get a monopoly.
They just want to reset so they can get on the ground floor.
Day's coming.
I mean, even like some of what it's like, even me just joking, it's like there's like inherent contradictions in it, because that's the way that they're conceiving of like what crypto is going to do. It's like, oh, it levels the playing field. And it's like, first of all, people don't even know how to fucking, you ever try and use MetaMask? It's like,
It's insane.
You expect most poor and working class people to just, you know, figure out the people struggle with fucking two-factor like you think
it's like the easiest way to know what the fuck.
My entire life savings. I don't have the email for it.
My grandma literally called me last night because her flashlight was on her phone, like was on her phone, and she's like, I don't know how to turn it off. And we're gonna revolutionize.
So, hey, could you help me log into the MetaMask from my BitTorrent? From my Bitwarden account?
I was buying opium on tour, and then my flashlight came on. I don't know.
Yeah, and I've never, for the record, I've never been like the type of person that denies the sort of like operational potential with like blockchain or you know smart contracts or whatever, but it's like, and there's obviously there's new technologies in development that don't have this impact on the environment and so on and so forth, like proof of stake and versus proof of it's a whole conversation.
I mean, like you said before, it's like saying socialism or saying crypto. It's just like there's too big of a catch-all and has too much baggage not to really, you know.
But then there's the thing where they conflate the technology with the changing of the system or the changing of the whatever, and you see things like Earth, where it's like it's not even a radical application of what you're just trying to get that. It's like, let's get that in. Praxis Society was at least bold enough to say this is about statecraft under crypto.
Right. I mean, they started the first words on their page were free market communism.
Yeah, some of these.
The fuck does that even mean?
Market communism.
Free market communism.
I don't know what I don't know what that means.
To give, I mean, the one thing I'll say, and to give a little bit of context, is like Earth is somehow related as like an art project. I mean, it doesn't excuse it at all, but it's sort of like trying to play it as like, no, but we're purposely vague to try to, but it's just like it doesn't help because it's this art. Like I forget the artist's name because I'm horrible with names, but like basically they had a previous art project that was a startup. And it's sort of like, is it a real startup or is it just an art project that makes it interesting? And now this is like the next step of it. And it doesn't make it more interesting just because you're doing it semi-real. It just like sort of like now you're fooling people because you're not actually doing anything. Like you're not admitting that you're doing statecraft or something that you believe in. You're just kind of like playing with all these like symbols and elements.
Right.
You're not really adding anything to the world.
we like to keep things intentionally vague just so we can kind of, we can pivot once we have public support. A lot like a hero.
So we can hedge our bets and kind of go with whatever becomes the dominant thing.
A lot like a hero of ours, Mr. Alfred Masuli.
Alfred Masuli and Craig
Alfred
Hitler,
Masuli.
the greatest dictators of all. Yeah. It's just, it's a darn shame.
I have a.
What happened to the American
really had a lot of hope for Earth,
right? What happened to gold, right?
I'm curious.
What happened to gold, pal?
I'm curious, like who I don't know. I don't even this question, like even saying like design world, I don't know what that necessarily means, but people at the intersection of design and technology and whatever, I'm curious like what your experience has been in terms of like the hype and like of what 2 years ago with blockchain and crypto and whatever, and sort of like where people's, especially with the whole NFT thing, because that's in design. I remember it was like there were people who were like, oh, this is a come up, and then there were people who were like, this is the future. And it was like split down the middle for me. I felt like, where people were like, oh no, it's just a way for me to make a lot of money really fast. And then the other people were like, oh, I think this is just gonna, this is gonna change. This has radical implications for visual, people who create through different visual mediums or whatever.
Right.
It might still. I don't know. I mean, I think taking a step away from crypto, it's like this intersection of tech and design and the commercial world and some of these ideas that even are in this weird write-up. It's like, I don't know, that's been one of the tougher things of like trying to separate the two, of like working on some projects just for rent and trying to engage with these topics, and then how much these topics are starting to interfere with those jobs where like brands are starting to talk about, using these terms and sort of like, no, we're interested in like these things, and that they're not, but then you have to kind of like, that's really impossible. Like I'd rather make a dumb toilet commercial, because then at least it doesn't have to pretend to be about community or some bullshit,
Right.
Thank you for bringing that up.
That like that sort of schizophrenia is like full on happening right now. Like all the big brands are tapping into this stuff, and it makes it really confusing. Also because then once you do bring it up, like on these kind of forums where it's genuine, there's other people that get confused about, oh, but that's the same as what Nike's talking about, right? Or like, you know what I mean? Like, it gets, it makes it, I don't know. That's really a dark thing, I think, of the last few years. And
like our brand's going to just be full on socialist in the future.
Or talk at least like it, and then make it harder to talk about real socialism.
Wait, you said it's going to be what?
Like brands are going to be like
full on socialist, you said?
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. It's like, I see these like Ivy League sort of like people, whether it's on the creative direction side or they're just behind these campaigns, and they legitimately have like a cognitive dissonance where they're like, like this is my work, and so I want to express myself through the work. And it's like, you're expressing yourself through a contract with a mega corporation that does not give a fuck about any of the values that you're trying to communicate through the channel. So there's like, I'm saying that to say I feel like there's a lot of brilliant people in the design world, and they have like really good values as an individual person, but it's completely removed from any sort of practice, so it ends up just being commodified in the context of their work, in their jobs.
I feel like there's got to be now more than ever such tension between the creative side and the brand or the client or the whatever. There's that tension where it's like even people who are top class are still
I know I say cognitive dissonance a lot, but that's a really big thing.
It's rife.
I'm saying that to say like
it's tough to deal with.
I'm saying that like to say though, like no, in terms of like tension, there's probably not that much tension. Maybe
there's internal tension.
Right.
You have that tension.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, there's tension, I think, for individuals, but I think it was this Chomsky quote's been popping up recently about how Marxist thought is particularly just exist in all these upper realms of like whether it's government or all types of hierarchical institutions, but with the values just completely flipped. So like, and I think that's been order of the day forever, is just figuring out ways to siphon out creativity and
that's my question,
praxis into all these larger institutions. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's just always been the way it is, but
it's just like, that's my question is like, okay, if now all the people that like green light the creative decisions have no creativity whatsoever, and then all the people who actually make the material are the most creative stock of the world, they're inherently exploited, they're inherently exploiters. At what point do you start to see like a literal broadly like creative people just kind of like you know, even ones that aren't radicalized.
I
Just
feel
like
we could. I feel like we could ramble about that for hours.
But seriously,
that's the hope, right?
I feel like back in the 60s and some Mad Men shit, they'd be like friends with the clients.
Can I speak to that? Can I speak to that?
Yeah.
Because I think it's cultural, and I do think it's material at the same time. The phrasing I've used for years is you have to fucking open up space for those people to, and by space, I'm not just saying like, look, we're doing this cool thing. Come attach your name to it. But it's like, no, like we're competing against capital in a cultural sense too. So, you know, like how do you create the infrastructure for design people to step into another social logic, but where the social is meeting the material, where so they can be sustained in their labor and their work. They can do work. They can not live from a place of scarcity and then put their design efforts into something that's like counter to the logic of capital.
It's cultural and material for sure. And I think the cognitive dissonance thing, I mean, I'm guilty of that as well. Like I was working in advertising for a long time because I had this feeling that you could do stuff that would make a change, like without realizing how it's just impossible and it will always get commodified. I mean, I think what's it, REI, the sportswear brand, is a great example of that because they have this cool marketing thing. That was like, I think one of the examples that
we're a co-op.
Well, they're a co-op.
Yeah,
allegedly.
And they did this thing where it was like Blackout Friday. So on Black Fridays, they did Blackout Fridays, and they closed all their stores on the biggest, you know, shopping day of the year. They close all their stores and sent their employees out into nature. They say like, go into nature. We're not going to work today. Which is
they send them into
people into the woods.
We'll fire you.
Like on the surface, that's cool. Like, okay, you make a stance against the biggest commercial day of the year. And then, of course, now they're like, you know, telling their employees not to unionize because they're a co-op. And somehow that's an oxymoron to them. It's just like, you know, it's insane. But for a long time, I convinced myself that is like, oh, I can like use their money, use their power to build cool stuff that as a creative you can maybe make as you're normally, and then hopefully I'll have these chances to like really push the brands into cool things. I mean, back then I didn't even have like a political idea as much as I do now, but hopefully I think now that dissonance is becoming clear. I mean, that is somewhat the hope I have for now, that there is a lot of people just going like, fuck this bullshit. Like, why am I working for a brand that is talking about mental wellness or mental health on their Instagram, and meanwhile they're making me work weekends? Like, what the fuck's going on? Like, this is bullshit. And hopefully there is a opportunity there, but then again, like we've thought that before of like, you know, workers.
Can I speak to the REI co-op thing specifically too, in the unionization? And how that relates to what I was just saying before about the opening of space, because that's the other part of it is, as a designer or a creative director, if the work that you're doing is ultimately looped into, like we say, the hamster wheel of capital, it doesn't fucking matter if it's a co-op or it's a whatever, because the institution that the North Star of the institution is profit maximization still. It's not a social thing. Sending your workers into the woods is just it's just optics. It's like PR or whatever. It's just like window dressing for that foundational challenge, which is you're still, as an institution, you're being cooperative for capital. You're not being cooperative for liberation, for freedom.
Not to mention naming a day Blackout Friday as in opposition to Black Friday. It's a marketing thing.
Yeah.
People are just gonna come the other 4 days of that week.
Exactly.
So all I'm saying is, what happens when those institutions, the North Star is a social and cultural and communal North Star about like first of all, meeting the needs of the people that are doing the labor, moving this institution forward. And then what are the implications even just for design as a whole? The best shit is going to come out of it. You get a bunch of people looking over like, how the fuck are you doing that and like making a living? How the fuck are y'all doing this? And then people can look in and it's like, well, we're cooperating, but this is how we're cooperating. This is the decision making. This is the governance. This is how we're using our shared resources together. This is what we're prioritizing. And it doesn't have to do with fucking, we gotta grow. You know, we gotta hit this profit quota that we have for the next quarter. You know?
Yeah, I mean, shit, from a creative standpoint, I'm a TV writer. I do stand up, all these things. I talk about it all the time, and I'm just like, in terms of what you said about, I guess in reference to just design in general, and thinking that you can sort of plant these little seeds in your work that'll eventually grow, and just like I was the same way for a long time, just thinking like, and people still are this way, just thinking about it in terms of representation, and you just have to see these certain things, you have to see these ideas, and like it's true that nobody's acting on things that they haven't seen and don't know are possible, but like
low bar though,
the bar is very low,
and
that in terms of TV writing, especially in terms of like WGA sanctioned shit, it's like that representation becomes an end in itself. Where now people are just happy to see, whether it's, I'm happy to see, I can't believe this person is the first like Asian actor to win this thing, and we finally did it, we finally made it, and just like we have to start looking beyond just. First of all, does it not get exhausting to keep finding first like things that people of color haven't done yet?
Diversion, they can't ever let go of that shit.
And it's like they can do it forever too.
We got one.
They can do it forever. They can create new institutions. They can always create new institutions. And
they were the first one.
And say, well, you're the first black person to win a fucking Binky fucking Binky award. Like, what the fuck is that?
That sounds like a real. It's like an award for like.
That's like the next Webby.
That's the
toy designers.
That's the new Kids' Choice Award.
The Blimpy. Is that
the
what
Blimpy. Yeah.
It's like the 1,000 different Webbies that arrived. Like,
right.
Oh my god.
I wanted to say I first kind of like in the design context, I first felt this when I was working retail for opening ceremony. And we would do clinics with these designers. Like big ones, like Wales Bonner would come in. It was like really intimate. We would just talk with them about their new line or whatever. I'm specifically thinking of Wales because, and no disrespect to her, but you could tell like this was like her art, you know, like the way she was actually putting some really like, you know, drawing on heavy themes and like coming from this heavy place. And, but me working in that shitty ass environment, it was that disconnect, that juxtaposition was just, it was like, whoa, like you as a designer are so like disconnected or just don't care about the distribution end of like what's happening after your art gets made. And it also ties to another thing with designers in fashion too, around like, you know, ideas of like sustainability and like you know, there's a lot of you know, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, you know, there's a lot of rhetoric given to
blank washing, just fill in community washing, greenwashing.
There's a lot of like talk given to like, oh, you know, go against fast fashion and go, but it's like your brand is still producing new shit. At the point of production, you're going to these same, you know, outsourced, you know, manufacturers that are wasting water, wasting all of these, and even if you're not mass producing whatever it is, like you're still a part of the fucking problem.
Hashtag slow fashion. Hashtag slow fashion.
My fashion is very slow.
It's the heaviest clothes, and it's really hard to walk around if you're slow when you wear them.
Look at all these kids; they're barely breaking a sweat in here.
I started like a whole document. I kind of revisit every few months, but just like maybe I shared it with you. I don't know, but just sort of like trying to outline what you know, a social ecological fashion would be, you know, and like drawing from what Kropotkin said about, you know, luxury, like the problem with luxury isn't, you know, that it's nice, you know, it's that niceness is based upon a foundation of exploitation and like keeping people out, keeping others from having access. And also thinking about design and clothing as a form of just self-expression. And it's like there's nothing inherently wrong with expressing yourself through clothing, but the brand, the commodity, that's where it's like where you're getting into fucked up territory. So with the ecological element, it's like, we can't just keep
like, but I think what you were saying before of like the expression part of like creativity and how much people are still stuck in this sort of like creativity in art, and whether it's in fashion or TV or like anything, it's like it's to express yourself. Like that's the whole goal. It's why people are in it, and it's like, oh wow, I'm getting to express myself. Like Will's, I'm sure, same thing. Like she feels blessed probably that she gets to express herself through this and like live off of it.
Right.
And it's sort of like that's where the creative or the cognitive dissonance starts. Sort of like still stuck in this postmodern like Iowa writers workshop, like full, it's all about the individual expression.
Yes.
That's the holy grail of creativity rather than like expressing new values. But it's like, I don't know, I have a hard time sometimes. I don't want to like judge people too soon.
Oh yeah, of course.
Because it's so many people are just like stuck on that hamster wheel. It's like,
where's the alternative? Like,
exactly.
Someone
There's nothing
has
to point
show.
to.
Exactly. Yeah, and I second that also. Just
sorry, what did you? I missed that.
There's nothing to point to for people. Like there's nothing to be like. No, but look, you can do it like this because there isn't. So to then be, you should be the first to show everybody to do it like that. It's like, whoa, what?
Yeah,
right.
People really believe that there's no alternative shit.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah.
Imagination.
Yeah.
I'm like thinking of all the like times you've heard people be like, it's luxury, but everyone can afford it. We're gonna make it affordable for everybody to buy it.
Everything is
like,
a marketing
then that's not the point. You lost the point.
Everything's
the
a
point's
marketing
that it's
piece.
cost prohibitive.
And it's crazy in terms of like I mean, not specifically in fashion, but in just artistic expression in general, that like convenience mindset has infiltrated just something as basic as like clothing, which even if you shop more than the average person, you still have clothes that you cycle through that you wear all the time, and like the convenience shit doesn't really make a lot of sense.
No.
And so I'm like, thinking about in terms of like ways to express yourself through that. I'm just like, thinking about like in Nigeria, like you can just buy a strip of fabric. Like there's no places to just buy a strip of fabric and just make shit.
Right.
But like the way we think about things is now is like, oh, I don't have time to just make my own clothes. I don't have time for that. And all these things sprout up to sort of account for that. And I was thinking about AI earlier today, and like, I don't necessarily believe it's going to replace artists. I don't think that's possible. But there is this notion of just like, as we drive ourselves further into this hamster wheel shit, into this like, in this like grinding work mindset, and more people are just prohibited from creating and expressing in the way that they want to. I think people are going to start to take solace in the fact that just not even that they get to create themselves, but that creation is still happening. And so the fact that art is still being made is somehow gonna like distract people from the fact that no humans are making it.
Right.
I think there will absolutely still be artists among the privileged class.
I feel like
obviously,
it'll
like,
take out like a big chunk of like the graphic design in the world. All this shit, like every birthday sign with SpongeBob and Deadpool on it, like every restaurant, like sign with Jokerman font, like all those will just be AI generated.
Oh yeah,
people will type in a website. You won't require any.
The fronts of every daycare center where they just put like proprietary characters.
Every
Sesame Street,
every wedding invite, like everything. No human's gonna be designed.
Cars in front of the daycare.
That's the thing with like machine, but any technology, it's like it wouldn't be a problem if it arrived in the future that we would all like to see, because
democratic,
machine learning, image making, all these kind of things that it's doing. Yeah, it's gonna take away the shitty jobs. Like I don't want to do image search. Like that's the worst part of my job. It's the sort of repetitive. Like I already know what the image is in my mind. I have to like Google and stuff. Like if a machine thing can help me do that, that just takes away the shitty labor, except that in this world, the shitty labor is the people that need that labor. So, obviously it's like, it's not such a bad thing for some of these jobs to be replaced. Except that in a world that has an hierarchical job structure, that is a problem.
It's like, how do we got to create more jobs for the people that can't make art anymore. They need money.
Yeah. And it's just like, I don't know. It's like thinking about like having fabric and making my own clothes. And it's like, I don't even make my own food. And I blame the fact that I have to fucking work under this. Like it feeds off of itself. It's like the stress of it, the psychological toil of it makes you a lazy fuck.
Yeah.
And then like, it's just there's a convenient consumer option for every fucking thing. So it allows you to fully like disenfranchise yourself and lose skills, literally.
Dog, I've done everything in my power to resist getting a HelloFresh subscription.
Oh, yeah.
That shit feels so bleak to me. Just in terms of what I just said, it's like
those are blowing up. I feel like all of those are because.
Do you have gorillas here? Is that a thing here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was like 10-minute delivery.
Yeah.
It's in the Netherlands now too, and I'm just
I
really don't want to use it. But like, there's been ones where I'm just like it's just like I need a disc. Well, how much do I need? But you just fall trapped to the convenience.
It like infantilizes you.
Yes. Absolutely. I mean, bro, like from the start of the pandemic until maybe a year ago, I was writing on TV shows from home, and like I really started to get into this mindset of feeling like I really felt like a Matrix battery. On top of having the broad realization that like whatever I thought, whatever like headway I thought I could make socially or politically by putting ideas into a TV show, just having that feeling go away. And then feeling like I'm really just kind of like plugging away every day. And I was on a show on LA time in New York. So I'm going from 1 p.m. to 10 p.m. every day. So I'm just like wake up late, don't really see the sun, order food to my house, don't really have a reason to leave. And like 9 or 10 p.m., that's after most stand-up shows start. So I'm not really doing that anymore. I'm just like... I'm really just kind of like putting more output into the world, and then just inputting enough to keep myself alive. But it really felt like, I've never been more conscious of just like, I'm here to support this institution more than the other way around.
Right.
You know?
Dude, and just like in general, and just like the day-to-day life and just how that feels under this, like recently, and this is partly because the first couple months of the year are always a slump for a lot of people, I feel like, but it's just like I feel like I get great sleep. I sleep every night, and I don't know if you ever tried that, sleeping every night. I do it, pooping every day. But I get good sleep, but it feels like it's just never enough. Like it feels like I'm still tired. It feels like I'm going to sleep again already. Sometimes I'm so impressed, because to me it's just a lifelong struggle, at least right now in this current. It's a lifelong struggle to have normalcy, like to have a normal balanced life. Yeah, and it is a series of personal failures. You're making choices that are easy. You're skipping good habits. We're a habit-obsessed society. Yeah. And it's like, these wouldn't even be called habits if like we were just living like normal. Like
differently.
If we just had a life every day and we had our own routines and interests.
Can I say something on that? Yeah. It's tied back to the design and like fashion conversation. Lip service was the expression I was looking for. Like there's designers who give lip service to that we're in ecological collapse and there's all these different, but nothing in terms of how they're producing stuff changes. And I feel like, I guess it's like, for me, it's like an appeal to design people, and especially like fashion design people, where they are kind of stuck in this dichotomous thinking around like, and I guess I'm thinking of designers where they have radical politics as an individual, but they don't know exactly what their practice is with their labor when they have this like interest in clothing and expressing themselves through clothing. I feel like the in-between, like given the state of affairs in terms of like the consumeristic conditioning that all of us have grown up with and are finding ourselves in, and then also the pressures of wage slavery, I feel like the next wave, and it kind of is already happening in different ways, but it's like leaning into this idea of the like local artisan again. You know, it's like there's so many like people that are now like upcycling is huge in terms of like people just making one of one, you know, bespoke.
What is that, by the way? Upcycling?
Just using, you know, fabrics and materials
Pre-existing materials.
that are old or that they, you know, they pick up and then making sort of like a Frankenstein, you know, out of. I mean, it doesn't always look that way though, you know. So
what is the difference though between? It's a good question because like recycling and upcycling, is there a difference? Like I guess
in the clothing,
is it upcycling because you mark it up when you sell it?
I mean, I think so.
No.
I think does recycling not imply like it's sent off to a place for somebody else to handle it? I feel
in terms of clothing production, there's a difference.
Right.
So like there are brands where they're using recycled materials from a factory that's a manufacturer that's producing brand new clothing. So they're taking scraps and then using that to make their clothing or whatever. But I think with upcycling, the implication is someone is taking like pre-existing clothing or materials, deconstructing it, and then piecing it back together. So it's not direct. It's like secondhand chopped up Frankenstein into something.
It's not a full
new.
Dilution of the material.
Yeah, it's also not reliant upon
chopped and screwed.
It's not reliant upon new production of like new materials and clothing and whatnot. And there's waste, like
so
it's to avoid manufacturing waste.
Exactly. Exactly.
Got it.
But I was just saying that to say like there's, you know, it's like it's not like all of us are supposed to be like tailors or something. Not that it's bad, not that it would be bad to have those skills or something for us to be producing our own clothes or whatever, but it's just to say like there are people just like with any other thing, you know, like an electrician or whatever, where they're like, that's for whatever reason is the thing that they're passionate about. And I do think there's a way in which there can be a thriving, rich culture, like basically redefining fashion, but it's like, it's in a path to like this balance with the rest of the natural world and like cooperation.
It goes back to needs and abilities, right? I feel like
absolutely.
We all need clothing. We might even need like something just to feel better about ourselves or to like, express ourselves. Right. But, like most of the people making cool clothes or whatever, like they're not making it because they need those clothes or because they're servicing people needing those clothes. They're really doing it because that's the way. I mean, there's maybe a little bit of that and making rent. I mean, so if it was more about needing clothes, it would be very different. I mean,
and I would also say even when it comes to fashion, the types of designers I described earlier, they feel this conflict and tension because when we're saying fashion, like that is mostly statist, class-based bullshit, elitist bullshit. That is 99.9% of what it is. And you have like some people that they try and like ignore that or act like that's not the case. And then you have, you know, you have the artists, the real artisans, and then the faux artisans in the mix, and they're like, I'm just trying to do my thing, you know, and it's like, but their clientele are just rich ass motherfuckers. It's just like, you know, I didn't have a thought beyond that.
Something that you made me think about is like, and it's like I'm speaking in big general terms here, but I feel like, you know, with the internet, you know, subcultures are becoming more just like the ground level of culture. It's just atomizing culture, and then it's like it's becoming these like deep funnels of specific. Because now if you get into a subgenre, there you can just dive so deep in it in a day. I mean, like there's no like gatekeeping or community that you know, like you can't get into it. You can just get into it, and it doesn't matter where in the world you are. And it's like I wonder what the implications of that are for like if we do start moving towards more like an artisan craft based thing. I don't know how capitalism like co-ops that, but I feel like they will. I feel like there's a there's nothing it can't touch.
That's already happened. I love Dr. Romanelli, but he does in Dr. Romanelli, for those that don't know, is like, you know,
those that don't know.
Me too.
He said that so like whole room. Everybody knows Dr. Romanelli.
He's a designer that like he made his name by taking like finding these sort of dead stock vintage materials, like sometimes brand new. Like he could find like, Coca-Cola merch in a storage facility somewhere from like 1988, and it's like brand new. Wow. And then he takes it and he again Frankenstein pieces it together and something else. And then the it's like thousands of dollars what he's charging. Right. But then he does like corporate brand partnerships and deals. He put out a pair of like Converse sneakers and whatever, where it's like, again, mass production. It's probably limited production in the context of this company, but the company is using that brand exclusivity to, it's just getting absorbed by the corporate. So I'm just saying that it's already happened. It's already happening
Localism writ large in general has just become another buzzword. I mean, I totally believe that we should go back to more like from the crafts in clothing to like local food creation and like how do we feed ourselves on all this stuff. There is, of course, a point where like I don't know how much we can feed 8 billion people just with local food production, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't look into it. At the same time, there is this sort of like local food has become just another like organic, gluten-free, whatever label that is being put on stuff.
The fucking bodega around the corner has hot Cheetos labeled as organic. Like,
and it's crazy that Bookchin was writing about this in the fucking 60s and 70s, said it was going to happen. He's like, the organic is going to be completely
eco-friendly.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, to the point I think you were making about dipping into a culture, I think like the fucking Trilateral Commission report was talking about that in the 70s. They were like, they had a passage in there about how like it was essentially saying like because of television, access to media and all these things, that like the cultural distinctions that kind of justify nation states and give them the appearance of representing an actual ethnicity are kind of, those lines are disappearing because because people have access to all the same media and all these things. And like, how do we make a case for liberal democracy once those lines are that blurred? You know what I'm saying? I don't remember all the specifics of it. It was just a very long way to say Italians make it a pizza.
And then it's like also that leads to more like hyper-individualism. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, can you elaborate?
Well, it's just like, I don't know.
Well,
like,
are you saying because everyone's more connected, then it's you get these broader categories out of the way, and then it's just like one to one, like.
Is
like, that what you were saying?
You can really create a character now. It's like you can really be a guy. You can be your own. You can. It's like, but it's like at a horrible cost. But
you could just dive down any online rabbit hole and like become whoever the fuck you want to be.
Even in skills, like I feel like there's just in general more awareness of like niche skills and art forms and cultures and all that.
I want to respond to something specifically, just like because I think it's just really important. Like, it's hyper individualistic, or I think that is what it is because of the systems that we're coming out of and we're conditioned by. But there's something liberatory simultaneously in getting those broader categories out of the way.
Technology that would be great if we didn't live in the shit
world.
living
in the right world.
Right. So it's
I mean, I think it was in what you said. It's like you can frame it in terms of like, you can dive down whatever culture and just put on a mask and pretend to be that person.
Right.
Or on the other end, you can also dive down a rabbit hole of like skills and crafts and all these things that you want to engage in and learn how to like create in the way that you want to create rather than consume in the way you want to consume.
But even like individualistic hyper-individualism, it's like, the other thing I want to clarify is, people... It's related to this conversation, this false dichotomy between like individualism and collectivism, right? And like, I know when we say hyper individualism, like the implication of what we're saying is like, no, like there's an individualism that is important and necessary and is inherent to like humans living lives as self-determining autonomous human beings. The hyper individualism is like the warping of it's like it's a consumerism, it's a commodification, it's a self-interest,
it's a stand-in for liberation, it's a stand-in for freedom. It's like you get the freedom to choose what to watch.
I have the freedom to buy all the right things.
So there's this new layer, or rather new level of connectivity globally between individuals that's now being informed and shaped by the values of these oppressive systems that we're living under. And a part of the oppressive systems, consumerism is a part of that. That's why I always say everyone's like their own PR agent now, because it's like they have a social media profile, and so now they know everything about optics and that looks bad, and that it's like
how the system forces you to use it. I mean, I think I agree. Like,
dude, seriously,
because like
I
being
want to live in a world people are saying dumb shit. Need to be corrected.
Well, and it's not, again, everything's not being crystallized in time, captured in time to be used. It's like everyone's potential FBI agent when all it takes is a screenshot.
Bro. Dude, I saw an interaction on Twitter today where a guy was bragging about having sex with some girl, and then she quote tweeted it with a video of herself being like, "Your dick was small and you were limp the whole time." And I'm like,
right. And now,
damn,
and downloaded 4,000 times and stored on 300 of those people's external hard drives, and
it's
who
true.
knows what happened with that information?
Immortalization.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
People don't talk about that enough. Like
Snapchat was onto something, bro.
like just the impact that is having on multiple generations of people's psyches, like in terms of basic social human interaction. What does that do to how people communicate with each other? We're always talking about like lack of vulnerability and like distrust. Well, maybe it's because we're communicating through the fucking digital where anyone can go.
That's
why
like,
I can't even grow. I can't be wrong. I can't be. There's nothing.
There's no, good faith doesn't have a chance on a bad faith communication.
Right. And it feeds back into the PR agent thing too, because it's like, well, I have to be perfect if I'm in the public digital sphere. I have to be, and I have to be mindful of who's fucking with my, as an individual, not in any type of broader organization, not in any kind of broader community. It's just me. It's just about me.
Right. That's why, like, as much as I do have those insecurities and anxieties and paranoias about things like that, being an online person, like, at my core, my principle is like radically not giving a fuck about it.
And I get that. Right.
Yeah, like it's like, what am I gonna do? This is an unfair game. Like, I just can't. I can't move. Like, I can't. Every person I ever DM or who DMs me or I interact, I can't give a shit that's gonna be leaked.
Right.
I can't give a shit about any part of my life getting leaked. I don't give a fuck.
Right.
It's still you watch people just get ate the fuck up every day. You watch people get mowed down. Sometimes, a lot of the times, deserving of it.
Yeah.
But still, you're just like, fuck it.
You could argue that mentality, I feel like most people would associate that mentality with like just you're being a shitty, inconsiderate, like dirtbag person. And for sure there's people who they abuse their power, they abuse whatever, and they think exactly like that. They're like, what are you gonna do? You're gonna cancel me? You can't. I'm fucking rich, bitch. Or whatever. Those people exist, right?
No, I'm like, I'll figure it out. That's
I'm saying that I think that could be a piece of how we collectively reclaim our own humanity.
Oh, for sure.
It's like, and it's not just to say that, that's all happening in the digital sphere. It's like, if we build real community with each other, that mindset is actually reinforced. If you live amongst however many people and you all know each other and you cooperatively and communally and democratically decide what's happening with the infrastructure that you all live on, what the fuck is the digital or whatever gonna mean for you if you fuck up or whatever? It's like, well, I'm accountable to my community. And whatever happens past that is going to be dealt with in real community. It's not going to be out in the The
real is a really like important piece of that, I think. Because like even it sort of ties into, I think, the conveniencing of technology and like how we are all tempted on a day-to-day basis to use these things, and every time there's just like another thing that meets you that can shortcut it, and the digital and communication platforms, whatever, there's still that in the form of trying to build real community. Like I can just tell how even these systems and their dynamics corrode how I interact with my real community, like real friends. Like if I don't see them face to face for a while and we just communicate over text because it's easy, because like, oh, should we meet up?
We don't ever run into that.
Oh no, it's never happened. Never happened.
What are you talking about, Brian?
We see each other in person all the time.
Very
You only see each other like
unfamiliar.
this, right?
We use carrier
Unrelatable.
pigeons. What are you
I
talking
unrelatable
about?
sleep in a bunk
problems.
bed in there. I don't know what you're talking about.
Never had conflict.
It's never been ambiguous what the tone of a text was.
Right. What were you saying there?
No, but it's true. I mean, it's like, but I think we trick ourselves into thinking we can build it through these systems.
Yeah,
And also,
yeah.
like, I notice it myself. Like, one of my best friends that I work with a lot, like, every once in a while would be like, should we meet up in real? Like, let's just FaceTime. It's easier. You know, it saves me 10 minutes to go here. It saves you 20 minutes to go there. And you can just, even then, sometimes tell you have less patience with each other, or just like, you know, these things corrode. And so, I don't know, I just wanted to make the point that, like, even when rethinking digital infrastructure, which can be a part of it, but like, it has to start real. Like that is because it's so much bad faith is just like seeped into these systems everywhere, and to retrain to good faith, that can only happen like this. I think.
No one should starve because they have a picture of their penis in their phone.
Their own penis in their own phone?
Definitely not.
Lock screen. I don't care.
That point reminds me about Bookchin's point on utopianism versus futurism. And like, people can, you know, we can have a semantics debate about the use of the word utopianism or whatever, but the distinction he's making is between a future in which we've just carried these exploitative and dehumanizing logics into the future in a more advanced, you know, aesthetically or whatever form, or in terms of, you know, the utility of it. The distinction between that versus harnessing the, you know, technological developments for something that's socially liberatory.
The former being futurism, the latter being utopianism.
Correct.
For my own
correct.
Yeah.
The Flintstones and the Jetsons are the same show. They're the same show. And we don't talk about that enough.
How do you do socialism, but you're not social?
How the fuck you got 5,000 years of human history portrayed on 2 separate cartoon programs, and the best we can do in the future is that you can still beat your wife and kids on a spaceship to Mars?
They're in space and they're still running, making noise when they run. How does that work?
My man makes cogs professionally. He's not even a cog. He gets to make a part of a machine.
He still had to go to work, and he had a robot maid.
He is a fucking robot slave, but he still got to go to work and make cogs.
Yeah.
For Mr. Spacely.
This is funny, but it's also a perfect example of what I'm saying.
They had to be drunk all day back in the day, Hanna-Barbera. Just like, just give me a fucking bear with a tie. He steals picnics.
It's also related to what you were saying on AI in terms of, like, you know, people are usually talking about, oh, like, what's it going to do to the job market? It's going to get rid of these jobs or whatever. It's like, what happens when you have people that they've cultivated these liberatory, like, social relations between each other, and they figured out how to live with each other, and then they get this technology put in front. Then how does it make their lives easier, not in service to capital, but in service to them having more leisure time, having more human time with each other, more time to learn, more time to grow, so on and so forth. Like, that's the difference. There's a lot of, like, left liberals and, like, people that they have good intentions. Like, I'm also thinking about what you said about interfacing with people digitally, and where you're just like, it's like, it's not going to be the same. Like, I feel like there's a lot of people where they want to believe that, you know, luxury automated, what do they say, fully automated luxury communism. Like, their conception of that, like, they want to believe that it's, in terms of the day-to-day, how we communicate, with the technology, it's only a few steps away of a difference in terms of just we don't have to have a boss anymore, or we don't have to have whatever, but we can still rely on the phone and the devices to just do everything for us, and they're not thinking about, like, they're not thinking about the implications from a social standpoint, from a communication standpoint. Like you said it's inherent in the technology. It's inherent in the fact that it's text. Like, it's text through a linear channel where it's just boop 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 boop.
I mean, to another Bookchin point, it's the delegation of power. It's like we have the ability to mediate our own relationships, right? You know what I'm saying, but when you look at Twitter, we're just like, we're delegating all this shit to a power that we don't even know what it's gonna do. You know what I'm saying? It's like we just throwing a situation out into the wind, and somebody's gonna pick it up and mediate this scenario between you and somebody that, one, you usually don't even have a relationship with, and two, could easily just message privately and say like, hey, either you hurt me in this way or we had this type of conflict, like, can we resolve this? And then it's like, because I think what gets lost when you have these conversations about cancel culture is that when you bring it up, just using those words, people get this idea that you don't believe in accountability. But the reality is that, like, that's not what that's is. It's not
accountability going on.
And usually the behaviors don't change after that accountability either.
They don't change, and in a lot of cases, you give people a reason to reinforce that behavior because they've lost
martyrdom.
Well, martyrdom and you in an already atomized society, somebody has now lost whatever community they did have, and now they're just like, I mean, whether they've lost like financial connections or whatever the fuck, they're like, people just get desperate, you know?
Yeah.
It's like,
I want to hit a note. I want to hit on a note on that where it all converges. Maybe to some people it's already obvious what we're saying, but it's like, yeah, you have to have community to have accountability, and then you need to have a specific kind of community to have a specific kind of accountability, right? And then for our purposes, it's like you need a community that's in balance with non-human nature too, in terms of the production, in terms of the consumption, in terms of whatever. You know, it's like all of it meets and converges at community to me. And it's like the mind-blowing thing to me is just, again, on this cognitive dissonance thing, seeing how many of the people that claim to want freedom and liberation and they're not even they're not even aware of their own conditioning. They're not even aware of their whatever, to the point where when you try to open up the space to try and cultivate community, cultivate some type of organization, it's like all the conditioning kicks in right away. You know, the consumerism, the customer's always right mentality. You know, it's like there's and we've talked about it before, but I'm like increasingly worried about younger and younger people who aren't even getting a baseline taste of what even if it's fucked up, but just like, oh, well, there's these real people that beyond my parents, beyond the nuclear family, that shape and inform my life and whatever. It's like I'm worried about what the implications are for future generations, where they don't have that experience. All they have is this fucked up technology that we've been talking about. And then when the people some people try and organize themselves in a way to try and live and express what we're talking about, the conditioning and the disconnect is so bad that there's just resistance to it. Yeah. You know, it's like so many people, young people, calling themselves socialists and communists and anarchists, all these isms and schisms. And I would argue a majority of them, it's like they don't.
No, you could aspire to be one of those isms, really.
Yeah, and it's like it's in your head.
Yeah.
It's in your head.
Yeah.
And that's great. That's a great start. But the point is to change things. The point is to actually live it and practice it. And maybe the practice of like some of these values isn't what you think it is in your head. You know, maybe it's not all just easy and like I click a button on my phone and now I got the future that I want. Now I got all I have to give is $5 to this thing and then my whole world is going to change. A new world is going to be dropped on me from these elite organizers of the future. They're going to do the labor and drop it on me like it's a McDonald's Happy Meal.
I mean, I've said this a million times, but like I truly believe a lot of people's politics is just guided by the fact that they don't actually believe they can do anything about it. I think that contributes to a lot of people diving down these like authoritarian rabbit holes because they
fascist ones. Yeah.
Well, just either or, and it's like it's just fetishism, and it's just this idea of like you see that something's wrong, and you see that something needs to change, and something can be subverted here, but you look to these figures who have just kind of like very uncritically like conducted, whether it's a coup or of some kind, it's just as this like heroic, like magical image of something that you think you want. But then in practice, like, which one of you is really going to pick up a gun and go into the fucking White House and like successfully kill somebody, you know? And I think just if people are actually realistic and practical about what they can do where they are,
Right.
So many people's, and also if they were faced with the prospect that they actually have to act, I think so many people would just like flip the switch immediately, you know?
Well, the other thing I was going to say, jumping off him, is like the more you realize what we could do and how many of us there are and how outnumbered they are, the more terrifyingly unfree you realize we are, because part of that unfreedom is like a mental block that is like, it's just realizing how little choice you actually have like in life, and how we basically, that's always been how it is.
That's almost like too painful to face for some people.
Oh no, because it's like when you're from this perspective, it's like, oh, we live in like a literally upside down world, like it's literally evil. The other thing you were saying about like consuming choices and that, like, pay $5 and the world changes, it's like, I think that's why you're seeing like this. I mean, it's always been that, but it's extra now. It's like, don't buy this because X is bad, or don't blah blah blah, and it's like,
that is so
okay. We can get into the nitty gritty of that, but like at the end of the day, shut the fuck up. Like, let's do something about it. You know what I mean? Like, that's how I feel. It's like, shut the fuck up.
I mean, G-Sec has a whole thing about like, and then you're gonna fucking like blame poor people for shopping at Zara. Like, that's the only thing they have. Like, that's not how you're gonna change something. Like,
And that shit still gets made whether they buy it or not.
It's like, that's not the change.
On that point, every time we have this conversation, or even like I have conversations with people, like, I guess it's the people who want to be open, or, you know, they're trying to like internalize what we're saying. You know, there's just that like initial reaction of talking about how hard it is. And my whole point is not to say that we're talking about trying to change the fucking world. Of course, that's going to be fucking hard.
Right.
Individually, collectively, like no one's.
Right. Well, maybe for you.
Yeah. Hey, no, not me.
I'm no different.
I would just intervene personally.
If I was in the world, wouldn't have gone down like that.
Right. But it's like, no, it's like we're not. I'll speak for myself. Like, I don't say these things to be like, yeah, you know, like everyone has the same opportunity. Like, come on, just, you know, try as hard as you can, and none of the other factors matter. Like, no, like that's not what I'm saying. It's the imagination piece. It's like, all right, well, let's be real about what's happening, and let's be real about what could be. Don't use like lies and mythologies at that level of the discussion to rationalize not trying to do anything.
Right.
Like, if you're not going to do anything, just be real about it. Just say, I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't want to. I don't feel like it.
Right.
Just say it. And if you want to accept that for yourself, so be it.
Right.
Like, I'll speak for myself. Like, I'm not judging you. Like, it's not like a moralistic thing for me. I just know I want to be free.
Right.
And I know it's possible for us to be free. And I know what's possible for us to do collectively to try and be free. Well, but it's like, make up your mind, you know, like make up your mind. What do you really want?
Right.
And
don't try to talk me out of it.
Yeah.
Right. Don't be a roadblock.
Right.
Yeah. That's so important, because it's like, if there's something to that, because it's like, you can say, hey, in the current way I got set up, if the world's changing, I can't do shit about it. I won't be part of that until later.
Right.
That's fine.
Right.
But that doesn't mean it's just completely impossible.
Right.
Like, you can't just just because you it's impossible to you. But it's theoretically probably possible.
Like, but I work 60 hours a week, so could y'all just shut this whole thing down? Could y'all just like,
stop trying? I can't do it. I can't do it with you. Stop trying.
I can't come. I can't come.
Right. So stop it.
It's like that point we always make about like how you start to go reactionary when you go down.
Yes.
You start to literally become a counter-revolutionary.
Yeah.
Like that's what you're becoming. Is like you're like, it's the same boomer shit of just like, that's a slippery slope.
Right.
Because then it's like, unless you're in that pocket where there's like a good chunk of people be like, well, that would never work. People would have to trust each other, unlike they do now. And it's like, that's the fucking point. Like, people don't trust each other. They're so competitive and selfish. It's like, that's where we're trying to change. That's the exact point we're trying to change.
You know what's crazy is how thin that veil is sometimes. I think I said this in the group chat, but I don't know if I said it on the show. But like, I was talking to my cousin about that.
You've talked about it before.
Yeah. He was like,
I think
really?
twice now. The cousin,
Really?
the cousin who said people are selfish. Like, he watches the show. He's like,
he mentioned the Babe story in a previous episode.
Yeah, I did mention the Babe story. Yeah.
I know there's gonna be a compilation of me just saying the same shit
cousin.
over. I got it. Okay, so the thing about me, I got cousins.
I was on this Greyhound bus one time.
I got this thing called family. Okay. Well,
Bro said anyways. That's like when they come back from the cutaway gag on Family Guy. They're like, all right, well.
Imagination. It's all about imagination.
It's like the Raven with the cards. It's like, we got new materials. Like, we got cousins.
What other cousins do I have?
No, I do think the moral of that story is on imagination. It's like,
but make the point.
on
it's a point. I think it's a good point.
Well, it's on imagination, and it's just the fact that a lot of people have just heard the same thing over and over, and they've never heard a justification for it. Right. They don't have anything to back it up, and if you put one piece of information in front of them, then they're ready to let it go. Because I think most people, I mean, we have a liberatory instinct as people.
Right.
So I think if anything to push you in that direction, I think more people than you're aware of would accept that.
Yes,
you want
that threat. Yeah, because like if I lived in a world where I really believed in this like capitalist realism shit, this Mark Fisher bullshit, where there really is no alternative, and somebody told me there was, I'd be like, yeah, fucking give me that shit.
Well, explain.
Like,
explain.
Like, go on.
Yeah.
You know, I want to hear more. I think people aren't like. I think people are aware that they don't have anything to back up the bullshit that they've been fed their whole life. And most people have, and again, it's just a matter of values. I think most people are aware that reality has been distorted in some way to get the result that they've gotten. You know,
right?
It's just a matter of what end of the spectrum you're on, whether you're up here at the top and you're delegating those that misinformation, or you're at the bottom and you're receiving it. You know, and then, you know, there's the fact of people's aspirations. Some people want to be up here and they don't, you know, willful ignorance and all that.
Right.
But I think
it's also guilt. I think though. I'm trying to think if there's like
an
unnecessary, I totally agree.
Unnecessary guilt too. A large part of the time.
Probably unnecessary, like self-internalized like guilt and conditioning that is
it's
like a play where
you work for Target, you're a capitalist, dude. It's that
internalized.
Yeah.
It's like
you don't necessarily think about it that consciously, but you think, oh, I'm complicit in this.
Yes, I'm complicit.
But you're a wage worker though,
right?
And that's where it comes down.
The complicitness is, I think, what fuels maybe wanting to accept the unlogical answer. Like, I'm trying to think about. You're right. Like, it makes so much sense rationally. Where don't we all want to hear the answer that makes us feel better and makes us want the world that we kind of all want?
Yeah.
But I think some people want to hear the other answer because then it's like, see, I was right all along. Like, I knew I was fine just doing my Target job or like doing whatever I'm doing and not trying and not seeking it out because this is just the way it is. It's capitalist realism.
Right.
Like. That, I don't know. I think there is something weird happening there where some people want to hear the unlogical answer or get frustrated when you're like, but that's not the answer.
Yeah, because they have unlogical foundations.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
And it's like, we have all these different definitions for the same words. You know what I'm saying? Like when we talk about freedom, we're talking about something completely different from most of this country.
Yeah.
You know, we're not talking about something that's delegated to us by the Constitution.
No.
Right.
You know,
a piece of fucking paper.
A piece of fucking paper. It's like
Nick Cage is gonna steal it anyway. Fuck
yeah. National treasure.
Yeah. But it's like what I mean. Like
there's a treasure map on the back of it. I watched that recently. Great movie. John Voight's dad. Great movie.
My god.
Am I alone in not? Those lizards.
Yellow spotted lizard. Sorry.
Am I alone in not knowing he's a Coppola?
Nick Cage.
Yeah. Did everybody know that? And I just didn't.
I
know it too, but I didn't know it.
Yeah, he's Francis Ford Coppola's nephew. I didn't know that. Nepotism, baby. Sometimes it works out. Am I right?
Yeah,
we got Nick Cage. Sometimes you just gotta pick. You know, you need a kid to buy a bunch of dinosaur bones.
Yeah,
you gotta pick the right kid.
I feel like if Nick Cage was here, be like, that didn't really help me. Not as much as you would think. Didn't help me like that. What were you saying though?
I was saying, so like, what do you think about, like, I guess the First and Second Amendments get harped on the most in terms of, like, especially, let's say in comedy, like so many fucking people harp on freedom of speech as a right that comedians are at the front lines defending or some shit like that. And I get so frustrated with that argument because I hear like relatively rational people make this argument that like we're the last vestiges of freedom of speech, even though it's never really been free ever since the Sedition Act of the 18. Like, you know, like people don't think about these little like technicalities that are already implicit in constitutional amendments, and the fact that like something that's handed, what's supposed to be a natural right that's handed down to you by a legal body is never going to embody what it actually truly means. Because under a nation state like this, and especially in comedy, if you look at the way the industry is structured, do you really have freedom of speech if you have to go through years and years of avenues of like working with these entities, and like you start to self-censor because you know like NBC's not going to let me say this on their networks, or HBO's not going to let me say this, and then only then after working through all of those avenues do you eventually get to the Netflix, HBO specials, all these different avenues that comedians eventually get to. Where now you're so buried in these little, in that, I mean, whether it's guilt or just manufactured consent, I don't know, where you really believe that you don't believe those things anymore.
Yeah.
To the extent that you just won't say them, say disparaging things about the people. You won't bite the hands that feeds you, and then you don't realize a lot of fucking hands are feeding you.
Right.
You know,
the thread that's interesting in that is, wow, think about who you care about not offending.
Yes. And that's why.
And who you will just offend.
Yes, exactly.
Without thinking.
and I have been trying to make this point for a long time, and Demetrius sent me a book.
Martin?
Yeah, Dimitri Martin sent me a book that kind of encapsulates a lot of things I've said on the show over the years, but just the fact that like comedy has shifted into an art form that's made for domination. It doesn't exist for anything else almost if you go through these traditional avenues, you know, because at best you're saying completely innocuous shit that doesn't offend anybody, and like, you know, Nate Bargatze is a hilarious comedian to me. We went and saw him live. He's a great comic, but he doesn't say anything really. He doesn't push the needle, you know what I'm saying? Or you can fully go completely fascist and you know, just stand by while Netflix defends your right to do it. Right. Defends your right to say it, because we have freedom of speech. We have to defend his right to do it, and we have to pay him millions of dollars to say it. That's how it works, you know. And I realize I deviated super far away from your point, but you know, that's what it is. Those are the things that we defend when we talk about freedom or whatever.
Yeah,
I was gonna say
it's not like the actual just baseline meaning of the word.
I was gonna say, or you could go cooler George Carlin route.
You could go cooler.
Go more radical than George Carlin.
Yeah.
But not being, I don't know, gimmicky about it. So I'm a commie, right?
Blasting the hard R.
So I'm a commie. The war in Iraq, right? Right? It's always the
Pretty
same.
bad,
It's always the same like subjects that they zero in on first.
Right. It's
always like imperial. The whole thing is just about
Iraq.
imperialism.
yeah, right. Even then, it feels like just like anti-capitalist fanfare that's not really grounded in anything.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Well, the thing, like,
Who here agrees with me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to be watching.
Who here loves Kim Jong-un?
That was
right.
that was one of the funny jokes and like one of my favorite Patton Oswalt specials of all time. Patton Oswalt, like one of my favorite comics of all time, but he's like, I don't care who I offend in this room full of people I emailed, but it's like, I love that because that's exactly what all those people are doing.
Yeah, right.
What's up with his social media?
Huh?
Patton Oswalt. He's just
Dude,
like,
he's learning.
is he terminally online? Was that it, or what was it?
He's getting better.
Wait. Well, so what's not to go into a Patton Oswalt?
Let's
we
do
talk
it.
for 30
Remy.
minutes about Patton.
Ratatouille. Let's get into it.
All right, really quickly though, he's getting better. Like, what is that? What do you?
I was just making a joke,
Oh,
like
okay.
he's working on himself.
Oh,
Because all these celebrities, like, well, he took
didn't
like
he write? We
he
talked
took a
about this
selfie with
before.
Chappelle, and then he took another picture apologizing, and it was
Yeah,
like a
just
dramatic photo of him writing the
yes,
Instagram post
yes.
in the green
You
room.
didn't see this,
The
Brian?
deer stand sort of.
I love him, man. It's just he's just a little lib boy who's just he's under that same
Right.
you know hydraulic
Right.
press.
Yeah.
And the thing I'm trying to say also is like this is kind of diving back to the imagination, people saying, "Oh, it's impossible." It's like I feel like the hard thing, the dissonance that's hard to carry at the same time is like you can acknowledge we're on a total accelerating doom spiral and you can feel hopelessness but still have imagination. Like like it's like when there's 2 minutes left of a basketball game and you're like, well, we could do a 3 and then if we got another steal, like you just stay in the game,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. Your heart's in it, dog. You're down by 4.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
thinking about this professional Super Smash Bros. Melee player M2K, who Mewtwo King, who is, he's known for if he's getting his ass whooped, he'll just like lose the game like on purpose, like he'll just run off the stage and end it instead of like continuing to play.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think Mewtwo King's just going to run off and end it. And Mewtwo King immediately makes the job easier for Dr. Pee-Pee by just running off stage and raging.
And he's like done this like his whole
Yeah.
But it's like, don't be Mewtwo King.
Exactly.
Like,
Right.
don't do that.
Exactly.
I mean, sometimes sometimes there's a momentum, a feeling, or lack thereof, rather, where you're like, nothing's gonna happen here. But life is more complex than a video game. Okay, folks, there's more factors at play. All right?
Are you a gamer? Play video games?
Spotlight just turns.
Yeah.
Police light?
No, not really. I used to be, but yeah, I don't know. It's like became too much of a I'm afraid of getting sucked back into that time suck because I know I could really sink the hours.
That's
in.
my
Every
thing.
productive,
Right.
prolific person I've ever talked to has said exactly that. That's
Yeah.
why.
I
Because they're
bought,
like,
I bought a
"I'll just get
Switch with the pandemic because I was just like, I felt like a human battery as well. And I was like, I need something. Somebody's like, dude, Zelda, like you're gonna, like,
That's a good one.
you'll feel like you're outside again without having to go outside.
Oh my
So,
God.
which is
That's
again,
real,
quite
though.
That's
depressing.
a dark way to
But
sell it, but it's a good game.
It was great. It did the trick.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
it really, was what I needed at
Yeah.
the time.
Buck's
But-
been playing that like 10 hours a day.
Yeah.
On mobile, I don't get I have like motion. I can't do the
I don't
mobile
understand.
forever. I can't do it.
I don't understand people that don't just buy a pro controller and just stick
Same.
with the
That's me.
Joy-Cons. Like,
Just
what are you
treat it
doing?
like an Xbox.
What are you doing? I went in there and I beat that Temple Forum or that Divine
Oh, you
Beast or
beat
whatever.
that the
Right
hardest boss.
Right after you left, yeah.
Yeah,
Didn't get to witness
almost as
It's pretty cool.
it's gonna be like almost as hard as beating capitalism. Let's get back on topic.
We just rage quit society. That's what we do.
It's sort of like you're taking the L. You know what I mean? That's what you're doing. Like Mewtwo, don't do that, right?
Don't take an L, folks.
I want to
stand up for your rights. Organize.
I want to do to the NYPD the equivalent of the Donkey Kong move, where you put someone on your back and then you just go off the map with them. That's what I want to do.
Yo.
That's what I want to do with a good handful of them.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Good stage spike. Just throw them
In
off
a
the bottom
video
of
in Smash Brothers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God damn.
No, but
the question that comes to me is, I've never been to Amsterdam, but I'm like, I am curious sort of what the landscape is like in terms of, I hate to use the word political, but like, yeah, in terms of like, and I'm obviously not talking about electoral politics. I'm talking about, you know, it's philosophy, it's social, it's economic, it's
an interesting question, because I wanted to note on this, or I was thinking about this before you were asking about my design journey and stuff, and like your story is like much more like the one I was jealous of usually, where it's like people that got into design because they were part of a subculture. It also kind of goes back to like being a guy. Like there was just more of a, you know, there were actual subcultures. That's how people got into design, whether it was music or skateboarding or whatever. And for me, it was like, I always wonder if it's like a product of being a 90s baby or a product of being in the Netherlands. I'm not really sure, but like it was much more of like a career path. Like when I look back on it, and like through it, I found things that I really have been interested in, and but I think the start of it, I mean, there's a mix. There's like sort of high school, and I was just sort of like doing the thing, and I don't know, it was very like, I don't know, there was nothing that crazy about it. And then there was like, I was making blogs, and I kept making new blogs until I realized that I wasn't interested in keeping a blog, but I was interested in giving it a name and a header.
Right.
And so that was maybe the first inclination of like, oh, I like designing it, I guess, but I had no training in it, didn't know really how to do it. Yeah. But I feel like a lot of the Netherlands is sort of this very like, you know, sort of like, it's not as socialist or like, how do you call it, like social democrat or like welfare state as Denmark, but it's kind of there, and sort of just like, yeah, just be normal and just keep on the path, and you can have a nice little life that's not too hard and not too challenging. I mean, there's almost like a part where it's like, is it too mundane? Is it too neutral to really fuel the flames of what is needed right now? Yeah. Sometimes it's sort of like that scene in Andor. I don't know if you guys watched Andor.
I gotta watch that. I swore off all that Disney shit.
Same.
And they're like, Andor is the best thing they've ever made.
I just had a friend text me yesterday to watch it.
It's crazy good. It's
really?
Like, it's fucking good.
It's supposed to be like
Rebellion.
I did start it. Yeah.
Like there's a scene in it. They're not to spoil it, but there's a scene in it where they talk about like, to start a rebellion, maybe the people need to be under more pressure first from the system, which is, I mean, I don't know if I agree with that at all. I haven't thought about that too much, but it's an interesting notion. Yeah, it is a bit accelerationist, but it's more just like a revolution needs to come out of a very genuine need. And
I have similar conversations with friends in Japan. Just a random note. I mean, I could talk about it, but it was just reminding me of that.
It's like it's both the state of the
Netherlands. That's what you're saying in terms of like that's why I always don't get, why don't they try to just make that, why don't you just try to make everyone shut the fuck up, give them healthcare, give them like, if you're so satanic and evil, giving us a slightly chiller life, it would
well,
I mean, you get to save capitalism.
You would do it. Stop killing everybody, make healthcare, and that's it. But there's too much. It's too out of their hands now.
Yeah.
There's what, like the 40s through the 60s? Is that not what happened?
I mean, the question is, of course, like the Netherlands can do it within their borders because they maybe externalize a lot of that. And maybe in America, that violence is as much within its borders as it is outside. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I think it's a mix of like the quality of life within the Netherlands mixed with a culture as well.
Yes.
There's like this Dutch saying that's like, just be normal, you're already weird enough. Like it's very much like a.
How do you say it?
You gotta be a freak.
You can't say it in English.
Doe maar normaal, dan ben je al gek genoeg.
Wow.
Of doe maar normaal, dan doe je al gek genoeg. Like if you act normal, you're already acting weird enough. Like, and that's like it's such a like I get a bit bored sometimes being back just because it's not a country that celebrates characters. Just like not even success necessarily, although that comes into it as well. But it's just like. Yeah, there's no real celebration of like weirdos and just eccentric excentrism, and I don't know. That feels like it's part of the culture that also keeps down some of the more.
I did always think it was interesting that if y'all talk quietly enough, it sounds like you could just be from Wisconsin. It's like, what is that? What is that based on? What type of national character is that based on? You know,
I was gonna say it's almost it's worse on that sort of like that dynamic of people being placated, for lack of a better word. It's worse than in Japan, because in Japan, there's a lot of stuff. I describe it just around, it's at the cultural level of hierarchy, you know, like if you talk to people around our age or younger in Japan now, you know, they'll, if you ask like, who does everyone hate? They'll say like Oji-chan, like the uncle. And they're talking about basically where gerontocracy and patriarchy meets. It's like there's all these old men that are deciding everything. It's not too dissimilar from some of the discourse that's over here, but, and there's more examples. There's like senpai kohai. There's like all these things that, you know, in my conversations with Japanese friends, where you're like, well, that could be an opening to kind of like get people sort of like worked up and expand their thinking, their imagination towards like a better system or whatever. But it sounds like in fucking Amsterdam, it's like, it's so chill almost at a certain level.
I mean, let me also, you know, paint a slightly more complex picture. Like, I think obviously there's plenty of stuff. I mean, there's a lot of stuff wrong with the Netherlands, and there's plenty of people suffering from that. And there's a lot of like American politics that have come over, maybe for the better, but have been copied over in like a 2 one-on-one way. Like Black Lives Matter was just weird. Like copied over one-on-one.
It's weird.
It doesn't mean it doesn't have a place in the Netherlands, but it's more than black in the Netherlands.
Similar thing in Japan,
here too, obviously, but like in the Netherlands, like racism and people of color are so much more. It's, you know, so much more than black. It's just like a lot of that population that is as under the same type of pressure are, you know, Moroccan immigrants, Turkish immigrants, Indonesian immigrants, Moluccan immigrants. Like we have a huge mixing pot, being a fucking colonialist heritage country. But so there is stuff there that obviously is like, it's not all perfect, and there's those pressures are starting to work in like waking people up, and people are organizing and this kind of stuff. But you know, and there's some overlap with capitalism there starting to happen. It's starting to happen. Also, the housing crisis in specifically Amsterdam right now is getting to a point where people are really like going back to squatting, which Amsterdam has a really great history of squatting. Like it used to be legal. Like it used to have an actual functioning system where it was legal to squat, so it prevented people from just having real estate to make money off of, because if you just had it empty, people could legally break into it and basically claim it. And then you could eventually start renting it. But then they made it illegal. And now people are starting to like squat again, because it's just like the only way to protest left. That is also just like, there's like a fucking hotel that's being renovated, but nobody's working on it because they're waiting for the metal prices to go down. It's just standing empty. Well, like, so yeah, we're going to live there. So it's starting to happen, but I, for a long time, felt like, maybe it's a bit too good sometimes for it to really.
There's an overarching cultural dynamic.
And then there's the cultural dynamic,
I mean, that's what I picked up from the through line and everything you were saying, because it's like, even with all the material changes and these, maybe it's also the scale of the social tensions and dynamics, even like, you know, again, similar dynamic and conversation in terms of Japan as well. People have the same sort of like, and then fascists also use that as like a jump off when they say, look, the countries that are more homogenous are more at peace.
Well, and in the Netherlands, they're using it because the people that are most pissed off, I don't know, it's coming from, like, you know, it's like the farmers' protests are a big thing now. And it's like the people actually making noise are getting co-opted very quickly by the right because they're the only ones there to, you know, receive them. As is also a typical story here, of course. Like
Is there a like a Gen Z online socialist kind of archetype over there, or no? Like, is that just us we're living through?
I feel like that's global.
Is there like an online left from the Netherlands at all?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely like that stuff. Yeah, is there as well. But it's also like a big mix of expat, like. You know, there's like, you know, I feel like it's not like
just like it's so many parallels with Japan. It's wild. Same thing.
I'm sure there's like a fetishization of it that happens just based on.
It's so much nicer over here, like that kind of stuff.
Oh, like that? You mean?
Like that's what you mean, like expats coming over and just
No,
being
no,
like,
no.
oh,
No,
it's
just
so
that
nice.
they're expats,
That culture,
so they're kind of
that internet culture is
Oh, okay.
has a big overlap with the expat community because I think like I don't know, like it's just like an internet culture in general.
Right.
So like, and I feel like expat.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know, but I also don't have a great sort of anthropological picture of this, so I might be very wrong.
I mean, it does make sense if you remove yourself from your cultural background, you want to stay connected in some way. So I'm sure they're more likely to be engaged online in some way. But beyond that, I can't really speak to it. I don't know.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
Also, I guess like that stuff is coming a lot from like. It is coming a lot from art students. Like there is sort of a resurgence of this, again, the squatter movement, which has an overlap with like art schools and this kind of stuff. And I feel like within Europe, there's a lot of promotion of like inner travel within Europe between arts. You know, like it's a bit easier for even working class people in Germany to go to the Netherlands to an art school than it is, you know, to go like it's, I don't know. If you go, I don't know. There's like overlap there in that sort of crafting of that sort of Gen Z online socialist character in a way.
Because I'm just like I'm just thinking like here, like a fucking conservative dad could have like a daughter who dyes her hair and she starts talking about fucking communism at the dinner table, and I'm like I'm wondering if that's
I'm hoping it's happening. I think so, probably. I mean, it does feel like there's a, you know, as much as there's a problem with people sticking to the character of that, like we were talking about before, there's also fruitful ground there to build upon, right? Like to you know, those are, it's a good audience to try to capture or like talk to at least or engage.
And it's like, you know, the pressure can cause change, but also like the pressure can give you time to actually do the work of the change. So it's like,
This is semi-related. I'm just, because we've been saying like socialist and like socialism a lot in this one. And I just can't wait for the moment where that is not the entry point anymore. Like, and I know some people might hear me say that and be like, what? What are you talking about? But it's just, he said what? Frieza?
What are you talking about, monkey?
But no, just like, and where that's coming from is just like so many of the isms and schisms, they obviously create all different types of openings to like finding other ideas, and that's like undeniable. But I'm also sensing that depending on where you start, it can really heavily shape the scope of your imagination, where you're ultimately going to end up, what you're willing to accept. And I think that's like really, really important to look at, taking in what we've already said about how conditioned we are. You know, so like when you're talking about socialism, you know, you're just the workers controlling the means of production. It's like, well, that's not all that will make up a better world and system, and more specifically freedom. You know, it's like I'm hoping we can get to a place where this is related to I had a meeting with some Japanese friends of mine, and like we were talking about sort of the for lack of a better word, universal power in zeroing in on hierarchy specifically as the entry point, and then tying that to the ecological or environmental, if you want to call it that. And I feel like that's like the next level. You know, I know we talked about it a million times before on this show, but that's what came to mind.
But this show has helped in that sense, also for me, because it's like, you know, you sort of revert sometimes to certain lingo, or when you try to talk about stuff.
Of course.
And even if it's not socialism, then it's like, you know, collective decision making, or this or that.
Right.
And I think you guys are always really good at being like, what do you want? Like start with what you want. Like, what do you want? What do you need? And go from there. And like, shout out to Dan Taoyong, like who used to be involved with Soft Surplus. I was talking to him recently, and he was also just like, well, if you're interested in collective decision making, like why do you want collective decision making?
Why are you collectively? What are you collectively deciding?
Right.
For what?
And for what? And like maybe because you don't, maybe there's decisions you want to make, but you want validation from other people to make those decisions. That's why you want collective decision making. Like he was like really good at just being like, he's like that's fine, but like just start with what do you want?
Right.
And what and why?
And maybe the answer is to have collective decision making or socialism or whatever you want to then add to it. But yeah, what do you want?
You
like,
can extend that to socialism, though. Mm-hmm. Workers controlling means of production for what?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Why? And also, let's unpack workers.
Right.
Let's unpack class.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's like, I don't think it's a coincidence. And I don't remember, I feel like you were hitting on this note, though, like in terms of Marx, like so much inherent in Marx that just completely misses that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, that's a part of why these tendencies, like the authoritarian tendencies, are marked by, to be honest, 9 times out of 10, it's a misreading or misrepresentation of his own writings and thoughts. But in other ways, no, it's an outgrowth of some of the things he missed or was conveniently avoiding in his writings. You know, it's like,
I mean, when you talk about workers, it's like it's the industrial proletariat as opposed to every other person who can be said to be doing work. It entirely excludes, let's say, farm workers, for an example. It excludes domestic workers who happen to be women for the most part. Entirely
disabled people,
literally just anyone who's doing some. As long as you can mystify a form of labor, and say it's not what it is, then they don't get revolution. They don't get to own anything. They don't get. It just entirely boxes out, like, realistically, what 60 to 70% of.
Yeah, it starts to get into like that live to work kind of framework, where it's like.
There's also baked into Marx is like this positivism, like this notion of like humans have evolved to the point where now we're developing the technological capacity to literally like dominate and control the rest of the natural world, and we have to use that to free ourselves. And there's a contradiction in like inherent in that thinking, and that in order for us to be free, we have to coexist and meet the non-human natural world where it's at.
Right.
You know, I mean, there's 1,000,001 different points. And like the bizarre thing to me, in a lot of ways, is how influenced by anarchist Marx actually was, and utopian socialists specifically. You know. But anyways, and you know, if you're using socialism as an entry point, most of the time the narrative you're going to get is, well, there's utopian socialism and there's scientific socialism, and the utopian socialism, that's kiddie play shit. Don't look at it. It failed.
Don't look at
scientific socialism. Look, we got nation state neo-colonial representation, legitimized power with Red Banner, and that really, they were free over there. They're free over there now.
Look at us. We're pouring liquids back and forth from beaker to beaker. It's scientific socialism.
Right.
That's what I really thought science was.
There's more water in the small glass than in the large glass.
Here's the thing with the scientific piece, you know, like if you read Marx and Engels on scientific socialism, it's not bad stuff, you know, like it's talking about. It incorporates the utopian in it. It's just saying using a scientific methodology, trying and testing, and in the effort or whatever. But the problem is that it's interpreted as what we call scientism. You know, so it's this idea that science, this immortal, literally people will say immortal science. You know, which really it's is
that like Immortal Technique?
It's social, it's human study and interpretation, and largely European, you know, study and interpretation of the natural world. And there's something pure and you know, it trumps all, and we follow the lead of that consensus. And that's how we find our way to this socialist society. So that's how you get this mechanistic sort of like relationship or this picture being painted of humans that, look, we're so advanced that, you know, we can control all of this. We can control the rest of the natural world.
That's the problem is while we were advancing all that stuff, we were regressing all the internal shit.
The social,
we're actually not advanced at all.
Right.
Like an advanced society would
Degrading.
not be like this at all.
Yeah. So the Flintstones and the Jetsons are the same show. They're the same show. There's just tubes in the sky, but that's it. That's all they have. He's got a robot slave in the house.
I guess what made me think
Still has a uniform.
What made me think to go down this thread beyond like socialism being brought up is trying to imagine what in Amsterdam and other parts of Europe, like the quote unquote left discourse or whatever is like. And I would imagine it's similar as what's going on here, which is people are kind of arguing over their label, their personal brand and label, and you know, it's not really it's not really about the thing, as I call it.
I mean, it's another form of consumption. It's literally just adopting the right identity to be accepted by the people around you.
Can I say one last thing? I want to, for people who haven't watched previous episodes or like they haven't soaked in a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, I just wanted to end my point on the socialism thing on a point that was, for me, in my self-education was like really opened my eyes. And it was the simple fact that our problems didn't start with capitalism.
Yeah.
You know, like our suffering, oppression, domination didn't start with capitalism. And so when you realize that and you look pre-capitalist societies, okay, well, how did capitalism come and shape and form out of that? And how and why were people suffering in those societies? What was at the root of that? And the through line going all the way back to the beginning is hierarchy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's why I feel like when we're talking about social, again, like we were talking about decentralization, where it's like, I don't know what that means. Like, what do you really mean? What is the conclusion for you when you use that term? It's the same thing with socialism and communism, and then anarchism is another conversation, I feel like, but
and no,
I feel like it's got to be above the isms.
Yes,
right.
That is my point.
Yeah.
That is my point. It's not to say that there's not liberatory knowledge and ideas that you can find through. I tell everyone, just read it all, take it all, as much of it all in as you can, but think critically about it.
Yeah.
You know, there's also like, there's some fundamentals here, and the fundamentals go beyond. They go beyond. They transcend the isms.
I feel like.
Wait, but while we're talking to people who haven't seen the show, so my cousin was making a point about he said this thing that Nigerians love to say about human nature. So humans are so selfish. And then I you're not gonna believe I said this. It's not true, and you're not gonna believe what he said. He said, you guys know what he said. He said, really? Really?
We just wanted to clear up why the name of this chapter is Socialism is Bad. I know that's jarring, but we need clicks. No. Just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Okay, I hear your point, but what about Venezuela though?
Yeah.
What about Venezuela?
About iPhone?
Beyond socialism, that's my proposal.
Well, and that's what I think, you know, it's weird because like a lot of the times this shit feels like I don't know, it feels like a mission to Mars or some shit. It feels very alienated, isolated.
Oh yeah.
It feels like
shut up! You're pissing somebody off every step of the way, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
No!
And it's like, but it's also like, we were just talking today. I mean, like, even the people closest are so far. They're not even close. It's really crazy.
Yeah.
And, you know, we at least are already past all that. We're beyond that already. And so we watch just people we watch the reactions to this show, and it does often, you see people trying to associate us with shit we have absolutely no interest in being associated with at all.
Yeah.
In fact, like it's the crux of the whole strategy is that it is in fact not shackled by any sort of like categorization.
Right.
So it's just really funny because, but it's also like all these things, we say it all the time, but it's like once you see it, you don't unsee it. Like once you're past that, once you actually internalize, like I don't have to call myself a ML or a socialist or this or that. In fact, I don't even have to use those words
at all. Yeah.
At all.
Just take
it's
action.
hard to like go back to the conversation with the person with, you know, the DPRK flag and their fucking Twitter name and like try to, you know, talk to them.
Right.
But on the flip side of
Why
that,
you disrespect London, man? Why you talk shit about?
Let's drop that clip, man. Why not?
Oh shit!
He's
Fuck
always,
yes!
he's
do
always
it.
I can find it.
Can we do that?
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah, go ahead.
blur.
I don't live in that area anymore,
We could,
so
but out of respect for them, we could blur their face out.
sure.
But let's give the context. Did we tell the story?
A
on here?
Russian guy who was like looked chill, like he was a chiller, you know. He was drunk out of his mind, like, and I was like a block away from my apartment, and I think I made just some really blunt TikTok about Lenin or some shit. And yeah, he literally crossed the street and was like, about Lenin, man. Like he like crossed the street and he was drunk and he was rushed. He's like, Lenin's the best fucking thing we have.
Yeah, fuck you, filming right now. I'm fucking close your fault.
You know that. Why?
Like,
so why you say that?
He's all we have.
And I had just watched a video of like a Krav Maga guy being like, if someone wants to attack you or like wants to confront you, just compliment them. And it disarms them completely. And I was just like, hey, yeah, nice tattoos, man. Where'd you get them done?
It was Marxist hug your ass, right?
I like your tattoos. Where'd you get them done?
Yo, in Russia, man.
You got them done in Russia?
Yeah, man.
I like them.
Thank you. How you doing?
The spider web on them. Did that hurt?
Why are you talking all that shit? Like, you know, you're like a comedian, bro. Like, why are you talking all that shit, man? Like,
did that hurt when you got it done?
Lenin and everything. Like, you know, like, there is no better fucking, you know, option for us.
Then, what do you mean?
I don't fucking know, man. All right.
Have a good night,
safe. We'll stay safe, man.
Stay safe. And he was drunk, and it just immediately fizzled out, and I was able to go home.
That's great.
But it was the first time that I was like, I've been approached on the street only positively, except for that one instance.
He recognized you from your TikTok.
Yeah, and he was like specifically wanting to, but you know, that guy just cared. He was just a fan, you know.
But he was also a nationalist, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what's interesting to me. You know, he's the best we had. We had.
Fuck, I hope I can find that clip. But
Oh no, I got it.
Oh, you do?
Oh
Good.
yeah, for sure.
This archivist right here, amazing.
No, but like think about that on this point about imagination. To him, Lenin is like that's a symbol of this nationalistic mythos that makes up for him a part of his identity, especially probably living in the U.S. or in a moment where the USSR and those aesthetics are in vogue with a lot more young people. It's like really
there was a
interesting
class element too. Like his clothes were too cool. His tattoos were a little too nice. Like it was just like
that is a thing too.
It's like
Not to say that
he's
they're
now part of like bourgeois, like leftist American leftist shit.
Yeah, and that's not to say like there's a bourgeois corner of every fucking tendency in the world.
Right.
But the hierarchy and the bourgeois nationalistic mentality definitely go hand in hand. And the elitism and to authoritarianism, or rather, you know, I'm using the terminology like making a distinction in the
National
sense of like,
socialism.
well, in the sense that elitism is associated with the capitalists, but authoritarianism is associated with the people that are gonna liberate you. You know?
Yeah.
You were saying like unsee this, like once you see it, you can't unsee it. And I think that also ties back to hopefully what's happening, I think, in the creative class, or at least like how if the exploiters get it, you know, or so if the distinction becomes so clear, then hopefully it gets to a point where once you see it, you can't unsee it. Like that's at least my hope, where it's once some of these things start to click for people, and that's also maybe not to come back to like the creative scene or the left scene or whatever in Amsterdam, Netherlands, is that I do hope that there's a turning point that is within reach where it's like once you see it, you can't unsee it, and it just becomes like like we don't just own our shit. We don't just like we don't live our own freedom. Like these things are very logical. Also, like they are the sort of like inherently logical answers. So I don't know, this sort of seeing, like once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's what it feels like to me, at least. Also, like having still relatively recently started to engage with this stuff, like 3 years, 4 years now. Like, it's just like, I cannot imagine in 10 years people still working for a boss. Like, why would you do that? Like, if there's other ways to do it. And accept, I don't know.
Well, it's just like,
sorry,
I was going to say, like, it's just kind of like coming to a head where it's like, I really do believe that the creative industry at large like was more like, I don't know, there was more mobility basically, whereas now it's just like the disparity of wealth, there's sort of the disparity of creative control where all the creators are on one side and all the green lighters are on one side, and it's literally this, it reflects how our government is. It's like it's literally showing that it cannot run itself. It doesn't know how to run itself.
Y'all don't know how to act.
Right. And so it's just like, I feel like there has to be like that tension I mentioned before where the best situation you can get is still, it's like you're working under morons. And I can imagine, unless you're the CEO of like a whatever, like I see why everyone has this entrepreneurial spirit sometimes in the design world or whatever, like you're kind of a freelancer, your own boss, but then you're also working with clients, and it's like if you're really that good, unless you own the company, you're still like making revisions and not sucking up, but like whatever, you're catering to another person's like creative decisions who has no creative like pedigree. So I just feel like that's not gonna hold. And I feel like the moment there is literally anything that takes what we're doing from being, kind of the raw clay it is now, and it becomes something something
counter-hegemonic force,
something closer to paying $5 a month. It's not paying $5 a month, but it's closer to that than it is now. It's like maybe a mile inward to that.
It's $5 less than that.
Yeah. Then you're gonna see a big, like, the moment any of what we're talking, like, that's how confident I am in the North Star of this is, if this is where it's going to take you, if it can get a little bit closer to your front door, to your kitchen table, in terms of like understanding it and taking it as like a starter pack and doing it yourself, you're going to do it in fucking
You're basically saying we need a killer app, is what you're saying.
Yes. Exactly. One app could change the world.
One app could change it all.
Yeah. Platforms like YouTube, Patreon, Spotify, they're all ass. They don't respect your privacy, they're riddled with ads, and they're completely silent and unreachable when you need help. Have you ever talked to somebody at YouTube? Think about that. I sure haven't. To top it all off, we don't control them at all, despite being the reason they exist.
So that's why we're partnering with a design and development agency called 400 Million D&D to build our own cooperative alternatives that bring the best features of all those platforms together and that we can control together too.
We seriously got to have an exodus to some sort of digital Zion that we build ourselves. Somewhere where all of us can actually have a say over the technology that we're using to communicate with each other. For more on how you can support us all in getting off these shitty platforms, visit opencollective.com/digital Zion and tap in.
Just because these dystopian systems are eating themselves alive
doesn't mean they gotta take us with them.
Counter-hegemonic force to dissolve authoritarian power relations.
You doing Phil Hartman right now?
Yeah.
That was like a half-assed Phil Hartman.
Hegemonic force.
Nestled safely under our tree.
Partner.
Yeah.
No, I feel like I would make a small realization every week or so that like locks in all this information just a little bit more. You know what I'm saying? And it's the diabolical materialism. That's what it is. It's the diabolical.
That's not out yet, is it? No, it's supposed to be out tomorrow. Yeah.
But it'll be out
got
before
the joke
this.
You always go like the dialect. You're talking about the dialectic, Brian.
Oh yeah, it's the diabolical.
Wait till you see this next one.
But But yeah, I feel like I have just a new thing that makes just it clicks a little bit more, and I feel like I get just a little bit more of an endorphin rush just from knowing I'm talking about the right thing.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
just like feeling like I'm on the right track. Just like
actually talking about something.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Yeah.
like feeling like I'm not spinning my fucking wheels. You know,
You know what?
It's
I'd
like-
rather talk about this to anybody else, but you're the only ones who get it. So I gotta come back here every week. Gotta come back here every week, talk to these schmucks.
Yeah.
No, but
like-
it's like the communicate or just like
Yeah.
knowing, like I don't know, just for yourself. that-
Yeah, and just like a new way of explaining it every time I think about it. Like, it's really simple, and like I knew this in practice, but I hadn't articulated it in this way. But just like if you think about all of these working relations, it's just like they're engineered so that they're designed so that you're supporting the institution rather than the other way around. And it's such a simple way of thinking about it, but it's literally like if you think of just this lofty thing that's above you that you don't get to see, and you're putting all this work, whether it's like the church or like this vague idea of community or like civic duty, on all your resources and all your labor, all your energy is going up toward just maintaining that, and you're just left at the bottom to just like fend for yourself. It's like it's such a simple way of thinking about it, but if you reframe everything to be that way, down to the microscopic things like family, you know, just everything starts to unravel, you know, where where you start to think about like you don't behave in certain ways because we got to keep this family together. But it's like, this family sucks, dog. Let's just let it go.
You know, an extra dark layer on top of that I was thinking about literally just the other day. It was just like the disgusting, insulting layer, like the cherry on top, especially when it comes to business firms and institutions, is that so much of the time the systems set up for extraction that they're sucking every part of you for capital. The people that are bankrolling it don't even need it. Could bomb tomorrow.
Oh yeah.
In fact, they don't care if it bombs.
Could not give a shit.
They don't give a fuck. And the people higher up in the hierarchy also don't give a fuck, because whatever they're making is going to get them to where they need to go just long enough to keep going. And if it all collapses and the people that put their blood, sweat, and tears into it at the beginning get swept by the wayside, so be it.
Chapter 6, let's try again.
Look, I made about I don't know, I made 5% on that investment. On to the next one. It was fun while it lasted.
You're telling me Sequoia Capital just sees me as another line item?
Right.
Fuck.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of like creativity, it's just like there are so many barriers to just making shit, if that makes sense. There's so many like layers of like approvals and notes and all of these things. When you can have a little bit of that mentality, like take what's good about that mentality and say, we can just make shit, and if it fails, we can try again.
Yeah.
But because we're so arrested by the ideas of those returns and of things that have worked in the past, people feel like you can't just make shit, and if it fails, try again. And obviously that there's something to be said for like, there's obviously something to be said for resources, and like everybody's not privileged enough to just try something. And, you know, there's something to be said for like austerity that keeps people from doing those things. But the reality is, like, if you have, and even if you don't have, people are resourceful about certain things, you can just try shit. And if it fails, you can move on.
Yeah.
You know, and like I think about like the ways that arrests are not just like artistic creativity, but creativity in all ways, like in terms of like television. I remember attempting to pitch a TV show, and I gave up on it so quickly. I got sick of it. And what was supposed to be a pep talk that I was given, and this was on a show that I had done the podcast for years already, and I was tired of just the idea. And I was like, just put it on TV. It'll be good or it'll be bad. I don't care. and I gave up on it. And the pep talk I was given was, this person pitched their show for 7 years before it was on TV, and they just believed in it the whole time, and they just stuck with it, and then they finally got it on TV, and obviously it was canceled after 1 season, obviously. And I'm just like, just the amount of leverage they get just from having you waste that much time not doing shit, and the amount of like concerted effort
on just
actually not even effort, but just like it's just a byproduct of how shit works, that you just waste so much time thinking it's gonna work out for you under this logic.
I just want to, that extra, we were saying asking why and what for, that question goes even to some of these self-identified business owners and people that are starting business ventures and whatever. It's like, I would really hope that for wherever people are at in their political, journey and education or whatever, for people who are realizing what exploitation actually is and how capital operates, I really hope more people can be nudged to a different kind of action just by internalizing that notion that these business failures are like nothing to some of these people. So for you to be defining your value and your identity as a human being by what you do for institutions that are just that is degrading and is dehumanizing. And this doesn't even change for some of the more privileged people that are starting some of these businesses. And I'm not talking about the heads of Apple or these mega corporations. This is medium to, smaller size firms or whatever. It's like for capital, for profit accumulation to be the end of everything that you're doing with other people is degrading and dehumanizing.
Right. Mm-hmm. Just to get a bigger number that they could have just typed it out.
Why is that? Why? Like, ask yourself that question. Why is that what it is? And some people might say, oh, well, there's capitalism, and so we gotta do this if we all want to survive together. It's like, well, if it was about survival, wouldn't you take the surplus that you have to build the infrastructure for everybody doing this work to be secure and safe and not have to live from a place of scarcity? Oh, but then you would have to trust the people that you do work and you do labor with, and maybe you don't want to do that.
Right.
And why?
Right.
Why don't you want to do that? And are you still on the hamster wheel and stressed out though? You're still stressed out and you're still saying it's about survival and we got to do. So what? Like that's another contradiction that I really want people to think about. And
to dial back to the point from earlier regarding worker ownership, it's like if you take that same logic and the workers own the means, but they keep that little nugget of we have to just produce, we have to advance, we have to do all these things, then we've gotten nowhere.
Yeah.
Right.
We're degrading the earth to the exact same degree, but it's
exploiting yourself
and it's arguably worse because now people can't say shit to you. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because now you've supposedly achieved this thing that you say is good, that you wanted for this long, and people can there's no way for people to argue with you because they don't know another alternative.
I'll say
because this was the alternative allegedly.
I'll say too, it's again not to get into a semantics thing, but maybe you're not technically exploiting yourself in the textbook term, but there is a fucking boss inside of your head that you're just like we say, kill the cop in your head. There's a boss in your head.
Yeah.
And capital and that vertical growth is the end. That's it. It's the vertical. Yeah. It's the vertical. It's not expanding like socially liberated space or helping people meet these more and more people meet these social ends and in coexisting with each other. No, it's like we're in this vessel and it has to keep growing vertically. Yeah. But none of us are being dicks to each other, right?
Mm-hmm. Bro, be your own boss logic. I don't remember when it struck me as really dark, but there was a point when there was a very explicit moment when it did. It was just like, It just clicked.
Like that's not an escape.
Could you just be your own boss?
Yeah.
I don't have the energy to oppress you. Could you just like do it yourself? Like I'm so tired.
The thing that you made me think about when you're talking about the failures, and you go like any business guy who's like an influencer now is gonna have a video where he's like, I failed 12 businesses before I got here.
Oh yeah.
And I always return to this kind of idea where it's like it's like ironic. It's like the most standout sort of disruptive, whether it be in the creative field or entrepreneurship with businesses or whatever, they had space. Like they're describing a liberated, free thought, free creative
for
space.
an individual, or
like,
a group, a tiny group.
It's despite the way it works. That's why it why they at Apple or whatever, like, Pixar, whatever, like these really ingenious things, they happen because someone put up a ton of bread, expected nothing in return, and basically created a mini world, and then of course immediately started extracting shit out of that, but
plus the affordances of already public funded infrastructure and technology,
exactly,
so it's just like we're just describing doing what you're doing without the hypocritical system like everywhere around it. We're talking about creating that space, and that's just it. It's just there.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's so many layers to it. I can't help but feel like the guiding like instinct in me is to just keep kind of zeroing in on the seeds of the mess that we're in, and hoping that, because when you're talking about how each week when we have a conversation, it's like there's a switch that deepens sort of like an understanding you already have. I think that's an outgrowth of first internalizing the logic of conceiving of what the alternative can be, but that's informed by understanding the roots of the hellscape that we're in, and the roots aren't in capitalism. The roots predate capitalism. Capitalism is a development out of those social roots. It's like what I always say is it's social with material implications. And like that's the kind of conversation I feel like we gotta keep happening, in order for people to start really internalizing.
You were saying, I think it was last episode, you're like, you used to be more like you'd be reading geopolitical articles for hours, and then now you're more at the ground level. And I feel like that's what we're getting better and better and better at, is bringing it straight to the ground, simple but holistic. You know,
it's not disregarding the bigger picture of what's going on.
I don't know if he was completely right, but there's this talking about Dutch leftist culture. Actually, there's one guy right now, Abelman Broers. He's like part of this hang youth, which means just like hanging out youth, kind of like punk band, anarchist punk band. And he's been pretty good at like speaking to somebody that is, and he was saying like capitalism isn't selling something for money. Like if you make a bread and you sell it to somebody, that's not capitalism. Capitalism is believing that people are inherently bad and need to be protected from themselves. And he's like, and the opposite of that is just starting to believe in love and trusting people. And I don't know if he's right about that is what capitalism is, but I like the focus of it, of bringing it to ground. Like,
he's definitely trying to simplify as much as possible.
And getting rid of the ism and of like, like don't worry about it. It's just like the system right now makes us all feel like we shouldn't trust ourselves because we're bad. And we need to protect ourselves from ourselves. Like people can't be trusted. Like let's, and we need to do the opposite. It's like,
I mean, I can see where that's coming from in like the social contract theory, I guess, and shit like that. Yeah.
My nuanced sort of like response to that is related to what I always say, which is sort of, to put it another way, is like, I don't like everybody. Not everybody likes me. Some people want me dead just off of how I look. In this world, in this country. So it's like,
it's so hard.
We can get you new glasses.
Man.
I mean, that's perfectly fine.
And a guy came up and he put a gun to my head. He said, "You look like David Cross. I want to blow your brains out."
I'm gonna blow your brains out. What?
But it's like, it's and I'm saying that to say I'm saying that to pull on this idea of like chosen community, if we want to call it that, you know, of like, when we're saying we can do it ourselves and we can we can trust each other, it's like it's not everyone can just trust everybody.
No.
Right.
It's saying that there are people out in this world who at the end of the day share the same baseline, foundational, fundamental human values that we do. And because of that, we can cultivate a trust with each other. And then we can learn how to live free together.
Yeah.
You know, it's a little bit more nuanced, but like, I know that he's probably, that's what he's just trying to get people in.
Get to the trust part and like rebuilding that and starting from there and starting from the relationship part and like.
Right.
Well, it's like, just like that story with your cousin. I mean, it's like, it literally is, it doesn't take much to like break that. Like I was saying it to my parents and one of them was like, I don't know. Like, I think people are just like naturally, you know, just the classic line. And I was just like, maybe they have been, but what if we could all consciously choose not to be despite that? And it was just kind of like, oh, you know, that's like, that's really all. It's like,
I mean, that's what's striking about it is like that's best case scenario, I think, but that's like, it's a reflection of all the scenarios that exist. Like most people, if they don't say that, if they're not like, never thought about that. Most people don't have a response.
Yeah.
Because they haven't thought about that not being true.
Right.
They haven't considered the possibility that people just, we're not all selfish.
Yeah.
And even when we are selfish, we can be that way communally and think about our communal needs and still meet our own needs. I guess I don't have a counter
is their
argument.
God. Like that's their belief. Like, they cannot let go of it.
Yeah, they're just
that would
like,
fundamentally change.
They're like,
every
well,
fucking
if we do everything communally, if we like meet all our needs and then extrapolate that out into the rest of the world, like how do we have football?
Right.
I'm thinking about this, funnily enough, in relation to like the design landscape and competition between like designers, whether they'll address it or verbalize it or not. But just like the sports mentality, I feel like exists.
Well, and the scarcity mindset of like, if I don't do it, then he might do it, they might do it, she might do it, and then I don't have it, and you know, there's only so much. Like,
and never
better get it for myself.
And never ask, does it need to be done?
Right.
Yeah.
There's also, I mean, what we were talking about before of like the mess or some, I don't know, I forget where it came from, but basically this sort of like trying to stay in the mess of it also, I think is really interesting. Like this sort of, that it's not all one thing or the other, you know, like even if we're saying this, like of, you know, it's about leading more with love instead of distrust or more trust and like, that doesn't mean like all it takes is like, we just got to lead with love. But just because that's not enough also doesn't mean that we shouldn't lead with love, you know, like,
exactly.
And I do feel like there's cognitive dissonance, and then there's sort of like, almost it feels to me sometimes like our cognitive evolution of like, we're so fucking bad at sort of staying in that non-binary space. Like my brain also just always wants to like,
thinking,
you know, you hear,
taxonomies.
Exactly. Like you hear that something is not nothing, well then it must be everything. It's not everything, well then it must be nothing.
Right.
And I feel like, I almost feel like there might be a chance to like push ourselves consciously also, what you said, like, well, despite that, what if we try to not be that? Like what I think we can try to not think in these binaries, and it almost feels like there could be another cognitive evolution where our brain clicks into being better at thinking like this, because it does feel hard sometimes, but I think that's where the truth really lies.
One of the biggest like, you know, dichotomies, no pun intended, but it is gender. I mean, it really is like that also interrogates patriarchy. So it's like we're actually doing the most ancient we're interrogating the most ancient
get me fired up.
You're interrogating the most
me act up kinda.
You're interrogating the most ancient hierarchy system, which is patriarchy, apart from just physical violent domination. Patriarchy first, before you have the material change of, you know, like whatever, socialism, whatever. Like, so I think that's why that's freaking the fuck out of people.
Yeah.
Because it is basically anti-essentialism. It's like we're not just gonna distill everything down to a category, because categorization a lot of times is violence when we have these like relations. So
it's like, why do they need to know that that the texts are green? What is that for? What does that information do? What is the value of that? You know what I'm saying?
You see, people are collective, and then someone comes in and ruins it with the green bubble.
Hey, I hear you, and I'm gonna offer a counter argument. Fuck your little group chat.
Yeah.
Fuck your little iMessage.
But that's my community.
Yeah, you don't have to trust everybody. You could just trust people with iMessage. You just like people with iMessage. It's enough.
Yo.
Yeah.
I could.
It is really funny that it literally simulates an invasion. You just come in and just destroy the community.
Yeah, iPhone should have an animation where all the bubbles go, ah! They scream like the Evangelion angels, and they all crack into green.
Right.
No, yeah, like I'm really trying to look for this. It's gonna bother me if I don't find it. She was an Italian anarchist in like, this is like the late 1800s, and the crux of a lot of her writings were not just about like hierarchy, but categories, like as another source of like problems. And like, it's perfect that you brought up just gender like on that point, because if you really think about it, you know, what is the point of gender,
right?
Even you could even argue for sex, like categories of sex, like we know it's not a binary on either front, and that ultimately they're both socially constructed in different ways. And on the sex point, I'm alluding to intersex, people. But like, why is it? What is it there for? What are those categories there for?
Well, because we got to have different swimming leagues.
Right.
People got to be.
They're there so you don't have full autonomy over yourself. That's why they exist.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you can't do whatever you want to yourself.
I'm really like I'm putting this question to people who might be watching and have never thought about this before. Really think about it for a second. Even the liberal people who identify as feminists or whatever, and they'll be like, that's too far when you're talking about gender and sex, and like that's, I respect you, but that has no scientific grounding or whatever. But it's like, think about what those categories inherently do for you, like in terms of just getting in the way of us recognizing our mutual humanity. Why do I have to say that I'm a man, or does someone have to say that they're a woman? I mean, for any reason, like, what is the point? It's like, it's control, it's domination. I mean, that's the answer. Is it's like, if you can categorize. People usually say when they're talking about like people of different racial and ethnic identities of like, oh, like they're trying to keep us, separated. We gotta, like we gotta unite through, we gotta unite through class. That's really what it's about.
Take the most racist people of every race, bring them together.
No, but it gets at this thing of like, you can't ignore that the divisions that are already existing, but it's like, how far are we really willing to like interrogate those divisions and where they lie?
I mean, bro, I joke about the swimming thing or sports in general, but like, and I've said this before, but I really believe that's like one of the last vestiges of like nationalist fervor that's just so deeply ingrained in people, where they're just like, we gotta have the leagues. And just in terms of like, let's say women's sports, like where it feels like we've come so far in advancing just women being in public space in general, where it feels like that's something you have to defend, like hardline, like for a better example, like women's wage labor, where it really sprouts out of this reality that like television made being in the house seem bad and being in the workplace seem good. And so it felt like it felt like a step in the right direction for women to now enter the workplace and become wage slaves.
On that, Anna Maria Mazzoni is her name.
Okay.
No, she was actually for I'll read the Wikipedia.
You say Anna Maria Mazzoni?
Mazzoni. It's directly related to what you're just saying. It's commonly held as the founder of the women's movement in Italy. One of the roles she is most known for is her pivotal involvement in getting women's suffrage in Italy.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and so those things appear as though they're these like kind of sacred advancements in women's rights, but they kind of completely missed the mark, you know.
When they become the measure stick, or it's sort of like when the measure becomes the goal kind of thing. It's like
yes, exactly. And there's also
it's like matriarchy as a response to patriarchy.
It's like women should be equal, so they should be in jobs, but now it's like women need to be working. That sort of like becomes a protected thing.
Yeah, and there's that like I mean, equality is a good word to use, I think, like because it's in equivalence as opposed to like an actual nuanced
opposed to freedom.
Understand
freedom.
Yes.
That's why I said
exactly.
Matriarchy in response to patriarchy. That's like the extreme. That's like the logical extreme of that sort of like track.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
It's just like the lady boss.
Yes. Exactly.
A lady boss.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Like matriarchy as opposed to matricentricity, you know, which is.
I would just say freedom to like
young metro.
Like, I mean, just to like in terms of like a
because look, it's
metro booming.
It's on the gender point. It's like if we're living in a world where we actually recognize each other's humanity and we are living as humans, there's no point in gendering anything.
Right.
There's just no point. Gender only serves to
but how will I know what butt wipes to buy unless I turn gay?
Right.
I need to buy the right.
No, it's like it's so deep. Like the implications are so fucking deep. You know, it like really. Yeah, it's really important, I think, to think about.
Yeah. I mean, I had a joke I used to do. I haven't done it in a while, but I don't know. About like there was I think it was Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson at one point said like trans people are the downfall of society, and then the joke was like that's fucked up for them to say, but like it's only bad if you believe society is good. You know, and like in truth, it's true in the sense that like once you start
it's the disruption of
it's the disruption of those like hierarchical categories that
is about that point.
This is the downfall of the Western world, and you're like good.
It's like the right owning itself or something. You know, it's almost like they don't know how true they are.
Just like the downfall of the world.
Did y'all see that Zach Levi or Levi? I guess Levy is like an anti-vaxxer.
Who is that?
The guy on the Shazam movies who was in that fucking what's that nerd show where he's like a nerd?
Big Bang Theory?
No, it's the one where he's like, I'm Chuck or whatever.
Chuck? Maybe. There's a show called
Zach
Chuck.
Levy was in it though. And he's in all the Shazam movies. Y'all don't know. It's not. Cut it out. No,
no, leave it.
Cut it for time. We'll try to keep these short. Anyways, he was just on Rogan, and Rogan was just like talking about Jordan Peterson, was just like just casually dead naming Elliot Page while describing why Jordan Peterson's not on Twitter. And it was just a funny clip.
That's a part of the dark irony is so many men in this moment, you know, we've talked about it already. Some of it's in what they call the manosphere or whatever. But just like this thing of like, look at how society treats us. Look at how, you know, women treat us. And yet they're just hell bent on holding on to and preserving gender. I mean, the gender binary, just the gender binary.
Well, they use it to reinforce it. It's like you have the same. Again, it's just a matter of the same information, different values. You know, because they start with these, like we talked about, was that convenient half truths. where a lot of these things are true about whether it's men's mental health, loneliness, how people treat men, and all just how patriarchy affects us in general. But then they take that and say, well, we need to take this and inflict it on women, which is a distinct category that there's no variation whatsoever within or without, you know?
They'll start with like the right analysis and then be like, you're like, exactly, yeah, that's the problem. And then they go, so we need to double down on that.
Exactly.
What?
Exactly. Well, yeah, it's like, who do I oppress if I don't know your gender? I can't figure it out.
A part of it is,
what am I gonna go by race?
A part of it is definitely the cognitive dissonance thing that's becoming a cliche on this show now.
Cogdis.
But I think it's also something inherent in gender roles as a whole. It's like, it's called a role to pull a KRS-One. It's called a gender role for a reason, my brother. You know, you from the time you fucking come into this world, you're told this is what you're supposed to do, this is how you act. And so now in this moment, there's almost like this type of like the social cultural crisis happening for some men, where that role that they've played, or it makes up their idea of themselves, is now hitting these contradictions and these tensions. You know, it's like, well, you're rightfully, you know, communicating about how you feel oppressed and how you feel like there's these values and expectations that are being put onto you, but you're unable to connect that to patriarchy as a system, and unable to connect that to these binaries and power more broadly, you know?
Dog, I saw a tweet that said, if the dick slip out the pussy, whose job is it to put it back in? And that's
wow. That distills Twitter in like literally.
It distills Twitter.
What they're concerned about.
And it distills like, how far are we trying to go with these fucking gender roles, bro?
Right.
How far do we have to prescribe this shit before you realize?
I'm still processing.
Just don't even bother. Don't even bother.
Don't even.
They were serious.
As far as I know.
Like if the guy
even if it was a joke, it was like them saying, "No, this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous."
Hey, fellas,
is it gay to be the one to put the dick back in?
You gonna put your own dick back in somebody else's pussy? Come on, bro.
You see how it's literally a spiral, like for everyone. Again, it's this fucking spiral, this dichotomous thinking shit. Literally across all identities, we're all just thinking that this is all that there is. So we got to pick one. We got to choose one, and it's dog eat dog. So someone's got to be on top,
right?
You know, and if we're gonna be equal, we're gonna be equal in the oppression. We're gonna be equal in the hierarchy and domination.
Right.
But wait, that doesn't work for some reason, because there's already an imbalance because of the history of the social systems of domination that we're shaped out of. Fuck, like what are we gonna do? It's like, why don't we just try and get rid of it? Well, nation states, the fucking gender.
I think that's what, like, part of there not being any, you know, alternative path, imagination, solution, whatever you want to call it. It when you don't have that, it allows for that you know, what do they always say we have in this country? Polarization. We're polarized. It allows for that polarization to like build its charge, because when I was a, you know, far more younger, ignorant man, the frustration, you know, going to basically, I went to film school, art school, basically at 2013, which I think 2012, 2013, there was a shift. I think that was because I watched it happen. Yes, it coincided with me going to college and being exposed to all these things, but I truly feel like, in general, I watched something start to happen, and it was a social awareness and awakeness and consciousness to a degree, but it was very like liberalized, and still is. But I think I can remember the frustration, and this is why I like do understand this to a degree, was like, dude, I've had to literally survive this my whole fucking life. And then you're just going to tell me that's not how the fucking way shit is? When I've had to die over, I've had to bleed over this shit, patriarchy, gender roles, all these things. I've had to kill myself to conform to these things. And you're just going to say easily they have no bearing in reality.
Right.
That's where that's not real life messaging comes from.
Right.
I had to live through this pain. That's the reality of it. You live in La La Land. You're protected from it. And it's like, it's because I think that so often young men are told the negative. There's nothing positive to gain out of these liberating reshaping of and it's like, that's important. Is like, no, you, the fucking jock from Wisconsin, are going to be more free if someone has full body autonomy. You will be. You just will be. And it's hard because like the freedom part is not focused on, I feel like.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah. And we're in a system where so much of I mean, to look at Amsterdam and how all of those exploitative things are externalized, like you said, it's like we're in such a position where we assume somebody has to suffer for us to, you know, for us to be, I guess, good, or you know, for shit to get better, you know. I had a longer point, but I don't remember what the rest of it is, so I'm gonna let somebody else talk.
You were just talking about the freedom point and how people, that's like not brought up. Like, I would argue it's never brought up. It's like almost never brought up. I mean, if it's brought up, it's like a footnote, because when you're saying freedom, what are you talking about? And in this like neoliberal hellscape that we're in, the ceiling of the conversation kind of just, it stops around identity, and then freedom is it's like asterisk, this is about us being free and equal as human beings. You know, but it's like, it's mostly we're talking about gender and the gender binary and whatever. It's people talking about pronouns and whatever. It's like, what happens when the conversation is like a part of this more holistic picture where labor, the land, all the stuff we talk about, all of it converges, community converges. That's where the expression of humanity exists. That's where the practical sort of like application of, you know, like, yeah, we should respect each other and we should whatever, but like until there's a liberated space in which we can start to live differently around the things that we love, around our identities, and like be at peace, people aren't going to have anything to grasp or wrap their mind around when you're coming to them talking about one layer of this freedom conversation, when it's around gender or it's around class, capitalism, or whatever. It's like, I keep coming back to this thing, like people have to see the holistic picture, and there has to be people who get the holistic picture and have a holistic alternative that they're trying to put forward and move on, for us to actually get to a place where this conversation carries more weight. It's not just about, hey, don't offend that person, or hey, get that person that looks like this and claims this identity in higher up in the hierarchy, so that it's just more fair, and it makes it look like we're doing a better thing.
It doesn't have to be about endlessly comparing and equivalating different acts to try to balance out reality. You know what I'm saying? To just balance out the world, if that makes sense.
Right.
You know, it doesn't. We don't have to spend the rest of history.
Oh, it's like
trying to find a
counterpoint.
Right. And I've been like on the fence about whether to bring this up, but I feel like the points have converged to try to maybe make this point. But if you all, I'm sure y'all are aware of the situation. Tyre Nichols and another black man was killed by police, and it feels like, almost like, obviously people are still talking about it, but almost it feels like just a blip in time that people were really energized about it, like the first day. And then I guess the cops have been arrested and are being charged. And
that whole situation has been eerily undercovered by media.
Yeah, and it's been it's also been clouded by the fact that the cops are black, which is another conversation. But also, I remember seeing that the cops got arrested and thinking like, people are gonna think this is enough. Somebody's gonna think this is enough, you know. And I saw a video earlier today of a cop. I don't know if he was like a sheriff or commissioner or some shit, talking about the cost benefit analysis of killing a person versus injuring them, and saying you kill them, this a $3 million payout to the family, and that's it. And then if you injure them, you got to take care of them the rest of their life. And it's the fact that They are making these equivalences with people's lives, and we think that we can go out and march for a couple hours, inevitably get bottlenecked into a fucking police kettle or some shit, and that's gonna be enough. And we can just do that every day, and eventually they'll see that we're trying, or that we want things to change, and they'll just change them. So we could either do that for the rest of history and look for empty justice, which is that equivalence shit, or we can start actually talking about creating the conditions for this to never happen again.
Right.
You know?
And can I say something on that point? It's like, think about all the pieces that make up freedom, at least for us, right? It's not just shit around your identity.
Yeah.
It's around, you know, it's like psychological, it's social, right?
So it requires other people.
It requires other people. It requires land. It requires material things.
Yeah.
Right? So what sense does it make to like this? I'm really thinking about Sapolsky again. It's like the being stuck in the bucket. What sense does it make to just grab on to one thing, one issue, or one part of how you're being exploited or oppressed, and kind of just, that's a part of the distraction.
Yeah.
You know, like, and it is hard. It's hard to wrap your mind around like multiple things at the same time. Yeah. But I feel like the community building piece that's where it can practically, you can start to piece it all together. And the other thing I wanted to say on the gender thing too, because we, especially, I'm sorry, like in like from the perspective of being black and you know, a black man, it's like you can see all the ways in which we carry it's like you see what the white men do, and then we just do the same thing, like in our context. So it's like for example, I'm thinking about this on the gender and the sex thing, like how many black men talk about freedom as a virtue or wanting to be free or liberation or whatever. But the second you come to them around these conversations around gender or patriarchy or whatever, wait a second, hold on, that's different. Right. And it's like my appeal, another part of my appeal, and it transcends, you know, identity at a certain level, is, you know, if you want this for yourself, think about acknowledge the fact that other people have to have it too.
Right. Yeah.
And then think about the ways in which all of us could have it together. That's when we're talking about humanity. That's when we're talking about humanization of all peoples. Right. And if you can start thinking in that way, you can start to see why gender, these categories don't fucking make sense. You can actually see, oh, that just gets in the way, because otherwise I'm just, regardless of what you look like, and I'm not talking about just race and ethnicity, I'm talking about, you know, people even saying like femme and mask, talking about femininity and masculinity. Right. All of these things it's serving to dehumanize at a certain level, because you should be able to look at somebody no matter what they fucking look like and be like, that is an autonomous, self-determining human being.
Right.
And whether they want to fuck me or not, whether they want to have kids, whatever they do with their body.
And this could extend to all life forms.
Yes.
Eventually.
Exactly.
Yep.
And then you realize the categories. It's like, wow, what a big ass net to cast male female. That's a big 2.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
2. 8 billion. 2.
Whoa, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's what you really internalize. You're like, whoa, what? No, that doesn't make sense.
What's cooler than 8 billion? 2.
2.
No. You can only be 2 things. That's not exciting.
Yeah. That was so funny to me. Even when people were trying to say there were like 100 distinct genders or however many, it was just like, can we just move past?
Past gender. Let's move past it.
Yeah.
It's like, maybe there's not a Star Wars canon. Maybe it's just what you want it to
be. Maybe all canon is head canon. Yeah.
Damn, I'm trying to get some of that. But what you were,
we're still boys, folks. Still boys.
But I think that's like a good mental exercise. Is like, just imagine you are good, everyone around you is good. What's the point of this? You know, it's like, what does this serve when you are good? Like, you know, what does your fucking phone, social media serve when you have a community? Right. Honestly, like what?
And what do you what good do you gain from approaching every person in your life with some preconceived notion that's not based on who they actually are
as a human? Yeah.
Like like it is just like, you know, if they just only had comments instead of likes, like, you know what I mean? Like, that'd be basically half the battle right there. It's like, it's just about talking and hanging out. It's not about like quantifying the shit. It's like, fuck.
Right. Anyways. I want to say on that point too, like, you know, with all of that said, I, you know, even still like describing myself as a man or whatever, I was talking about this, you know, because she's queer, and like we were just having a conversation about, you know, this it's like a really sort of like controversial.
I didn't know that, by the way.
It's a really it's a really controversial thing, and I'm sure like you've heard like queer heterosexuality as like a concept, but you know, like just to be clear, like I think gender is bullshit, but I still find myself using these descriptors, you know, to make it easier, you know, to just make it a more simple for this, you know, in discussion or whatever.
You said queer heterosexuality? I haven't heard of that yet.
Well, yeah, it's like is it
like a critique of how heteros are kind of using queer to like. Some people are saying they're like.
It is the debate. It's the debate. It's not there's critique in there, but there's also support in there. So it's like there's people who feel like, you know, if you still live by some of these like heteronormative whatever, but you're being subversive and you actually don't agree with them, then that's a good thing. And then there's other people who feel like, well, you're benefiting from like proximity to like queer struggle and reality and whatever. I mean, that's another part of why I still say, oh, I'm a man or whatever, but it makes you wonder. It's like, how would even these conversations change if we could get past gender? Not just I'm gonna keep reiterating, not just the gender binary, gender period. How does language change? How do we like not just talk to each other, how do we fucking relate to each other? How does that, you know? And it's like a mind fuck to think about, because we are living under patriarchy. We're still living under male dominated systems and institutions that are violent and coercive and whatever,
and exist in, you know, queer spaces also.
That's what I was talking about with my as well. It's like, that's how deep. It's like what we were saying, we're talking about systems and we're talking about it's like a mode of thinking. How do we like we break through that mode of thinking, and it's like, what does that mean for all of us, like after, you know?
I'm not there yet either, because I also still identify as a man, but a friend of mine, their answer, I almost did it wrong. Their answer is to like embody it. Like they were just they provoked me at some point, being like with a statement of like all men are rapists, and it was it was really a provocation. There was obviously like a lot of layers to it, but their point was basically like male culture, masculine culture leads to rape culture. That's why, like, not the gender or the sex, however you want to call it, of being a man is being a rapist, but like
not talking about your genitalia.
Living up to be a man in the sort of typical way is. And their point basically was like, they're now non-binary. I mean, I might be wrong how they feel about their body, but I think the main point was that they just don't want to identify as a man of that social construct, of that gender role. And so the way to change that narrative, change the conversation, is to step into it, not even as a man or a woman. And they're just like, I'm now non-binary and they, them, and that's what I want to do. And that's how I'm going to try to change the conversation, even if it's just for myself. Like, they really didn't give a fuck for a while about their name or whatever. They were just like, I just want to for myself see what it does to to aspire to something different.
Right.
Here's another thing. How exciting the prospect of identities formed out of being a human being and the freedom and love that you experience, not out of the contrast to whatever oppression you're experiencing.
Right.
Like, imagine the prospect of, instead of everything that we identify being in contrast to something,
Right.
it's like, I can't wait to see what actual human organic masculinity looks like. The non-rape version, because it exists.
Yeah.
Clearly, in a lot of people, you find that. So how fun it would be to see when people aren't in this like violent scarcity logic, what comes out of them. All forms, you know, and that goes for everything. Right. There's so much we're not getting out of it that could just organically form.
Right.
It's sort of the dawn of everything thing about like play chiefs and like play chiefs and real freedoms versus real chiefs and play freedoms. It's sort of like play identities. Like if we would go back to play identities, how exciting if we could not take on identities because we downloaded them from the internet and we sort of like let them be co-opted by our survival game. But could just come up with whole new identities for a day or a month or whatever
what
we
if
feel like.
What if there are things you identify with that you don't even have to state, other people just see it because you're in community with them and your identity is a communal identity. It's not just, you know.
Yeah. Another thing I find helpful on the gender thing specifically too, though, is like thinking about how many of the things we use to describe people are inherently gendered that don't have to be. You know, it's like when you're saying, it's like, why is resiliency masculine?
Right.
Why is that what we call masculine? Right. You know, or like, why is sensitivity feminine? Right. Why is that considered or like some people who are clearly they're going against heteronormative values in some ways, they're actually reflecting them in other ways.
Right.
You know, it's like,
it gets tricky, right?
And it's so it's a mind fucking. You're like, well, where is that coming from? Like that expression, where is that coming from? Is it coming from a human place, or is it coming from I want to be like look like a man place, or I want to look like feminine place? And it's like
our sexualities come out of like a lot of. Sometimes it comes out of trauma, or like some comes out of. Imagine if they were informed by positive experiences, or like you know what I mean, like But yeah, I think that's true too. I think that there is still a clinging to something because that space isn't there, you know?
Right.
That's also true.
Right.
Yeah.
But
looking for freedom within a fucked up context. What you just said reminded me of a joke. I think it was Chris Rock. Or it was really not even a It wasn't even really a joke.
We're talking about
there's two types of genders.
What's with the gender binary, y'all? It's a spectrum, y'all.
He crosses his fingers.
That's the Jimmy Fallon Chris Rock impression.
I think this might have been when he was hosting the Oscars at one point. It was just like, it was a simple question, but it was like, how has nobody thought of this? It was just like, why do we need a separate category for best actor and best actress? It's acting.
Right.
There's not even all the hangups of other gendered shit to justify this category.
No.
Why does this exist?
It's like a whole nother.
No, that shit is really fucking stupid when you.
That's what I'm saying.
It's the most
that's
dumb, arbitrary shit in.
It's like,
world.
and the award for best lady acting goes to.
So the only reason they don't do it in directing is, well, we all know why.
Right.
There's not.
They just don't
there's not
hire.
enough.
Yeah.
We cut the middleman out on that one.
Yeah. Right.
We do that on the front end.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So it's like if you identify as a man and you're finding yourself going, oh, look at what we're expected to do. Look at how violent, this society is towards us. They treat our bodies like cannon fodder. Look at what these women expect out of us. Look, it's the women. It's the women. It's like, wrestle with this gender thing for 1 second. For 1 second. And Google patriarchy. Hit the Wikipedia page for patriarchy.
Google patriarchy. Okay. Well, and also consider like maybe both parties are influenced and programmed by it, and that doesn't mean it's either one's fault.
Right, there we go.
Right.
How long have we been going?
So we've been going for 4 hours.
This is definitely a long
It's
one.
literally, it's just hit 3 hours.
Whew. Well, it was good.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
I didn't mean to like get into an ending vibe, but I just 3 hours. Thank you.
It's the first 3 hour one in a minute.
And we started with no problems. It just she got here. It was
no hang-ups, nothing.
Yeah.
No
Seamless. Yeah.
Is there anything you want to promote? Anything you want to say to the people out there, Brian?
They'll be like, look at the camera. Tell the folks what's got going on in your life.
Like and subscribe.
Can you imagine if we all turned into Mr. Beast at the end of this and we're just like, please subscribe. We are giving away 1,000 iPhone.
I healed 4,000 sickly.
Shout out to my sponsors, actually.
Anything
sponsored by?
No, not really. I mean, talking about space, I'm looking into doing that in Amsterdam. I think space is a really important thing.
Yeah.
So, in line with Spark, I think, and these type of
we're gonna help as
conversations.
much as we can, man.
Yeah. Just
that's
like,
so sick.
We got to have literal physical space.
I gotta come to this damn. I gotta check it out.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Gotta come to the damn.
Yeah,
for sure.
I mean, hopefully I'm also moving in with my girl, so now I can actually offer an apartment that's my own. So you can chill.
Yeah. Congrats.
Yeah.
We got to rally more design folks, even more
Exactly.
design folks into
Yeah.
this kind of
Absolutely
thing.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we have a tradition where we clap out on every episode.
And I'll be leading this one. A nice accessible pace for everyone. Let's practice what we preach, guys. All right? I mean, come on.
And he goes, pulls the fucking 20 in a 2. You piece of shit.
You're gonna clap with us.
Okay.
Yeah. I saw his hands run to the table. He was thinking about it.
All right. 1, 2, 3.